So, welcome to our November 12th edition of Winooski School Board meeting, and we'd like to call the meeting to order and start with the Pledge of Allegiance. If you would join me, please. The flag is right behind me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. That looked a little awkward last month when I watched this from my bed on TV with everybody turning their back to the camera, so maybe we can get a small flag to plant in the back corner, and then we'll go. Agenda items, any agenda items or adjustments that we would like to have for tonight?
Do you want to do the mindfulness?
Whoops, sorry, Tori, I skipped right over you. Yes, if you would join us in our mindfulness. Just a little prep or background for our
So we start
guests.
our meetings with a moment of pause, of some breathing of between where we've come from and where we're going. Our students also practice mindfulness in schools, K-12, and we've just gotten a grant and we're taking mindfulness citywide through Winooski. Mindfulness is just being able to take some space between all the thinking and follow your breathing and just sort of land where we are. This helps us center ourselves around what we're here for, come together to govern for the better of our community, for our kids, and get us centered on that. So it's easy. You can just take a deep breath in. You can either close your eyes or just look at a spot. You just take a deep breath in and take a deep breath out, settle in, breathe in and out, and just find a regular breathing pattern. Just notice where you've come from, kind of settle into your body, into your mind. You can notice if you've been carrying the weight of your day in your shoulders, kind of breathe some space into that. And on your exhale, you can bring yourself back into the room.
So the genesis of this from the board's perspective was we had our elementary school kids come in one night on our focus on learning, and they gave us the pitch, and they had the board do the mindfulness exercise, and we sat here, and I thought to myself, that was kind of nice. I left work a little bit in the back seat and get able to focus, so that helped. Okay, moving along. Agenda review and adjustments, anything? And Julian, welcome. Thank you. Nothing? All right, see nothing. We'll move along to Robin, our focus on learning.
Hi, everybody.
So let me
By way
introduce
of
you before you
Okay.
start. So Robin Hood is our Director of Special Services and formerly also had responsibility for our English language learning program. And since in this new year we have shifted ELL and curriculum into a new administrative position, and now Robin has also taken on early learning programming in addition to her special services responsibilities, and that's what she's going to talk about, early learning, tonight. Thanks.
So I think it's pretty pertinent that I'm here to talk about where kids are starting out, and knowing that you're all going to talk about careers after. So I don't know if I have enough, but take one. I'm not doing a formal PowerPoint, so I thought we could have a little conversation. The first thing I wanted to start out saying is a huge, huge thank you to our school board for supporting the renovation of our multi-purpose room this year so that we could start an additional preschool program for our students. Because of your dedication, we have 17 little 3- and 4-year-olds that are just really thriving. And the interesting thing is, just from the beginning of the year, where kids came in and they didn't understand transitions and they couldn't maintain attention for very long, and then you come in now and it's like, Robin, look what we're doing. It's really exciting to see. So overall, right now in Winooski, we have 91 kids, 4 and 5, who are in early learning programs. So that is terrific. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about what we have on site here at school, what's out in the community, and who our partners are, and just some of the things that we're doing together. So on site here at JFK, we have what we call the Winooski Early Childhood Program, and that is a collaborative between Head Start and Early Essential Education. And so that program is kind of co-taught with a special educator and a Head Start teacher, and we have a speech pathologist and lots of related service providers that work in that classroom. And then we have the new Early Learning Center that's over in our multi-purpose room in the middle high school, and that has a morning program of, it goes 8 to 12. So our goal is to next year expand that and have an afternoon program as well and serve another 17 kids. One of the important things for me this year is to really try to bring together Head Start, special eds, and the support services from both of the programs and meet on a regular basis to really talk about one of the things is the Let's Grow Kids Vermont campaign, which I'm an ambassador, but really talking about why do we have early learning and why is it so important for our kids. So we have done a lot of work on recognizing that kids have social, emotional, and cognitive needs. We talk about good stress and bad stress. We talk about kids' needs for talking and reading and singing and playing and eating well. And another thing that we put into the program that I'm training teachers on now is we're going to start social thinking. Social thinking, for many of you might know, it's a framework that we use at our elementary school to talk about kids, to think about how they interact with people in social situations. And so one of the main goals of early learning for kids is kindergarten readiness and kindergarten transition. So speaking with kindergarten, we're going to work more on what is it that would help our kids to transition into kindergarten. And we know that some really important things for them would be to understand some of the basic social thinking concepts. Brain and body in, expected behaviors, unexpected behaviors, and really getting kids to understand that they are little social beings and that when they're together with another person, they need to think about them, and that person's thinking about them as well. And so that's a big thing. Another thing that we're doing is meeting as a leadership team. So I, as the director for the district, and then the Head Start directors, we're meeting regularly. So we're really trying to make some really good connections between what's happening at school, and then we try to do some problem solving. We're working really hard to build a team that isn't focusing so much on the nitty-gritty of planning field trips and things, but really being a group of people that are learning together around what's important in early education and really beginning to look at outcomes for our kids. And so Teaching Strategies Gold is one of the assessments that we use in preschool, so we'll be looking at that. I also included in your handout a requirement for us to be accredited with our STARS program is that we do a parent survey every year, and you will see that I've included a summary of our parent survey that just really speaks to, if you go to page 4, that just really speaks to what parents are thinking about our program, and 100% of them are feeling really welcomed in their child's classroom. They feel comfortable talking to their kids' teachers. They're feeling encouraged about being involved in their educational program. They're aware of their child's educational program. They feel like they're being kept updated. I don't need to read through the whole thing, but one of the things that's really important to us is to really involve parents at that early stage and getting them on board as partners. And I think that's one of the real positive components of Head Start. One of the goals of Head Start is to do 3 to 4 home visits a year. They also do, Head Start provides parent trainings around different components of parenting and being a parent of a preschooler, so that's another really important thing, so I wanted to share that with you. In Winooski, off-site, we also have the Winooski Family Center, who is supporting another group of our kids, about 23 right now, and they are also working on the same kinds of early learning standards that we are. If you look on page 3, I gave a list of some of our other Act 62 early learning partners. We work with Trinity Children's Center, the Lund Home, their childhood center, Fletcher Allen's Y Time, Robin's Nest, Burlington's Children's Space. We're out in Williston, we have kids. Heartworks, the UVM Campus Children's Center. So you can see we have a lot of different partners. Moving forward, actually we had a partner meeting today. With Act 166, we know that we will probably end up having kids in more places next year, so we expect that we'll have some more partners. But one of the really important thing about having partners is that we meet regularly and really talk about what's going on in Chittenden County, and we're trying to streamline some things there. I just want to be sure that I talk about any other stuff. I think the biggest thing for us is that every week when we are together in our Friday meetings in the preschool is we're always trying to go back to some connections about what research tells us about early learning. And then we try to connect to, if we know that kids need to have this, this, and this, which are things that are going to build cognitive and social and emotional skills, then how can we make sure that we do those same things? So we do lots of activities where we really try to look at what opportunities are we offering kids around play-based learning, around singing, around developing language. Kids get breakfast and lunch at school. We do a lot with really trying to have kids learn to eat healthy. So just finding gaps where maybe we need to strengthen things. One of the things that we're working on is trying to improve the vocabulary that we're using with students and try to get kids to use some more higher order thinking. So we're really looking at our questioning and how can we expand students' language there. And so instead of asking them a question that is just a yes or no answer, how can we get kids to expand? And so if you walk into our preschool, you may see questions around different areas that are prompting people that work with kids to use those questions, and then we focus on one a week as well. So we're really trying to also improve in that area. So I think the last thing I just want to say is, again, thank you for your support, but just some other highlights on the last page, just, you know, being very aware that I will probably tap your shoulder, a school board member, to become a Let's Grow Kids ambassador and to really be able to talk to people about the importance of early learning. I'm sure Jen has already done that herself. But it's just really important that people understand that these little beings, the sooner that we can intervene with them and work with them, that, you know, it's going to make a difference on the other end too. So I'm happy to entertain any questions, and if you haven't visited our preschools, I'd like you to, but I think, Sean, you told me almost everyone's been by to see.
Almost all the board members have been, I think.
Any questions or discussion or?
The new space for the kids is working out well. It has what you need in it.
It has everything we need. I think Head Start wanted a few more cabinets and counter space, so they have actually done that on their own to add to it, but it's a beautiful space, and it's worked really well. And they actually have put some funds toward the other space in terms of, you know, some different materials. If you stop by, you'll see we have new coat racks and some other things that help to spruce up the other classroom as well. But they're both really great spaces for the kids.
And you mentioned 17 kids. That's in the morning session.
Yeah.
We have an afternoon session with 17.
We're hoping to have that next year.
Okay.
And
So it's just the morning session.
it's just the morning right now. Yeah.
How many incoming kindergarten kids do we expect year to year in general?
Well,
20, 80, 200?
this year we have about 80 or
77 right now.
77.
Okay, so
It's-
17 is just barely,
But that was more than we had
But
expected.
that's just one section, that they have another preschool program also, that's,
Yeah, we have an AM and PM preschool program as well. So
okay.
we're hoping that next year we'll have 2 running AM and PM, and we think that that will,
plus the other set.
plus the Winooski Family Center, and then there will be lots of other options. The one thing that we know Act 166 will do is it's providing parents more opportunities to get more kids in preschool, but what that also does is the more that you get kids in school, the more you have your eyes on kids, and the more able you are to identify kids early who might have developmental delays. So one of the things that we're doing in Chittenden County is really looking at how can we serve kids beyond the border of our city in terms of special education so that parents do have those choices. So we're entering into some early conversations around that, and I know that our Chittenden County Special Ed Administrative Group talked to the Regional Superintendent's Board and shared that we are trying to be creative and look at how we can best help kids that way as well. But right now we just have a really great staff of teachers. We just have some great, sweet little kids that are really thriving, and it's really nice to see.
I think one thing that's really important to note, the 91, that's up probably 25 to 30% from last year, which is fantastic. When you look at the number of births per year, we're at about 100 to 110. So we're getting close to about 50% of 3 and 4-year-olds that we know of that are in early learning programs. The national averages don't really go above much above 60%. So we're getting pretty close to where we want to be. We want to be even higher than the national average and make sure that even more than 60% of our kids are in early learning. But the national numbers and research show that there's always parents that choose not to have their kids go to programming.
And we did a needs survey in the spring, and I think it was pretty accurate, although we expected a few more kids this year, although we are now full. But we really did a lot of door-to-door and did a lot to find all of the students that we had. And, the other thing that we'll be talking about, I'm sure, with Sean, is that right now we do have 4-year-olds coming to kindergarten that are 4 on September 1. This year we looked at that data, and I think we had about 18 kids in kindergarten. One of the reasons we were having them come at 4 is because we didn't have other opportunities for them. Now that we do have other really good play-based opportunities that are really developmentally appropriate, we're hoping to change that date. And, Tori, you were part of those conversations long ago, like, why are they there?
I wrote about it in my report.
I was going to say, I
We
think,
changed it.
So we think that is great. It's like I look back, Tori, to 3 years ago when we tried to get a community needs assessment going. We talked about all that, and we really have done a lot just in the past year.
Amazing.
And so again, thank you for your support. Sean has been just an amazing cheerleader of early learning, and I think we're really moving in the right direction for our kids in Winooski.
And we're well positioned with Act 166 coming
Yes,
into
we
play
are.
now, which is universal pre-K
Right.
across the state. So
And not every
already
district
having
is.
our kids, we know where most of them are, so we're going to have more accurate counts because we'll start to receive ADM monies for them now, and so I think we're in good shape.
how do those come in ADM? Have they figured that out yet? Is it half?
It's going to be $3,000 per student, and that is with
Okay,
a
so it's
minimum
not-
of 10 hours per week.
Okay.
And, we already have some next steps that I'm thinking about, and one is really, we do a lot of assessments in preschool, and kindergarten doesn't really look at that as much, and really thinking about how can we have kids transition into kindergarten a little more seamlessly. So those are some of our next steps, is really looking at how can kindergarten know more about what we're doing, how can we know more about what kids need to be able to do to be successful in kindergarten. So that's another thing that we'll be working on.
Very exciting. Thank you.
I think it
Yes.
is.
Yes, it is. Good for
And,
kids.
and I want to thank Robin too, because she jumped right into this new challenge, and she and Maybelline Lopez have done a wonderful job. It was a real push at the beginning of the year with the renovation and still finding kids in the city to get into the program, and they did a great job of working with Head Start. And what Robin brings with her years of experience in special ed is a sense of how to build strong, sustainable systems. And with us being in the real growing era in early learning, that's going to be really important that we have those systems in place. So she's the right person for the job.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Robin.
Yes, thank you.
All
Okay,
right.
any other comments, questions? I know with Mike here, I know one of the things that we've done a lot of is partner with the city, programs in and within the city. I just have you pass this around. This will be a precursor to our next agenda item. We do a lot of things with the city and through the city that the programs just cascade one into the other pretty seamlessly, even to the point of the city taking on some programs here in a classroom at 4 o'clock after we've run them from 3 to 4. So it's not like it's a we and they, it's the kids are here. Kids are here and they're seamlessly here until their parents pick them up.
And we're actually meeting with
so-
some Thrive people about early learning, I think, next week. So the city is connecting with us in a lot of ways.
So, thank you very much.
You're so welcome.
Greatly appreciated.
All righty.
We look forward to great things as we move forward too. Great-
Well,
greater
when you
things.
get your stuff up so I can do a PowerPoint, I'll bring some nice pictures and videos of kids actually.
I'll make that a suggestion to the guy who can get it done. We'll see what we can do. All right, very good. So we have in here now one item that we had lost in previous agendas that we had to put back in and really need is public comment period. But it's something that is required in the agenda. And later on, you'll see a discussion about a policy with regards to public comments. So we'll talk about that after. So, Mike, way of introduction.
On the public?
Johnny Q, yes. So tonight we have with us Mayor Mike O'Brien with a proclamation from the city. I passed around a plaque that we received a couple weeks back. And Mike will probably hit on most of those. We'll post the plaque in our school board piece in the lobby out here, so that'll have some swag in there. That'll be good. So, with that, Mike, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you very much for having me here tonight. I just want to, listening to Robin in that presentation, I think it's great, the things that are happening up here at school, not only with pre-K, but, it called to mind the things that as kids go through the system and what great kids we have and what a great system we have up here, school district. We talked about the cooperation between the school and the city and our commissions that we're forming in the city to help us with city government. We've solicited and received folks, high school kids, who are on commissions and giving their input into the operations of the city, which I think is great. They're very enthusiastic, and I think it's a good opportunity for them to get to see how the city works and have an input into, how money is spent and how we do things in the city. So congratulations to you folks on what's going on here, as well as, how the kids are going through the system and coming out, and a lot of success stories. Winooski always gets a bad rap for the school district, but it's really, if you don't live here, you don't appreciate, how good a system it is and how well rounded kids are that come out of the system. So congratulations on that, and then I'm here to congratulate you also on this award that you got. We heard about this and we were both excited and very proud that you folks, got this recognition from the state, it's a school board association. I think it's fantastic. So in light of that, we on the council, and it's not, as a couple members of the council and our city manager said, it's not because there's relationships here between the school board and the city council.
When you have so few people, you're going to get that.
Well, we laughed about how small the city is, because of saying, you meet a lot of people, you get to know a lot of people, and you have folks who are related on different boards. And that's our case between the city council and the school board. Enough said there. So let me read this proclamation. We're proud to do this today. So it's a proclamation to honor the Winooski School Board of Trustees. Whereas the Vermont School Boards Association offers an award for exceptional board leadership, recognizing the exemplary work of a school board based on evidence that the board contributes to the well-being of students, contributes to the effective and efficient operation of the education system it oversees, enhances the cause of public education in Vermont, consistently demonstrates an understanding of the role and responsibilities of a school board relative to administrators, teachers, and citizens, consistently demonstrates effective and ethical operations as a board. And whereas the Vermont School Board Association selected the Winooski School Board for embracing their leadership role of governing with excellence, working for the future and keeping students at the center, stepping up to meet the challenges of governing the education of our diverse and complex student population. And whereas the Winooski School Board has supported the change to a proficiency-based system, working collaboratively with parents and community members in the development of our graduation expectations. And whereas over the last several years, the city and school governing bodies have worked together to deliver effective and efficient ways to meet outcomes that are mutually beneficial to Winooski's children and citizens. Be it therefore resolved that the Winooski City Council is proud of the work of the Winooski School Board and Superintendent Sean McMahon and wishes to share and recognize the accomplishments of the team in this award, and hereby proclaims Wednesday, November 12th, 2014, Winooski School Board of Trustees Day in the city of Winooski, Vermont.
Hey,
The school's not closed for that.
I think it's a federal
Kevin
holiday.
later.
We didn't get any mail today. I think that's why.
Nobody gets a day off.
Oh, man. Don't forget Ladanya and Rainbow, too.
That's right.
Oh. Congratulations.
Absolutely, they're certainly a part of our hit here.
Yeah, see,
Absolutely.
they're not only getting involved with the city, they're involved with the school.
That's
great.
right. Thanks, Mike.
Well, they should be.
Yep.
Somebody asked me one time how I could possibly be involved in a thankless job like this. This is it, right? Knowing that you can make a difference. And I think to the four of you guys, thank you very much.
No, thank
It's
you.
awesome. So,
And I hope you don't mind, I'm gonna take my leave.
no, thank you very much for coming up, Mike. Appreciate
Thanks,
it.
Mike.
Thank you.
All right, so let me start with welcome to our guests for tonight. We've gone out and asked for some folks to come in as a forum. We've taken part of the reason behind this award, I think, is that 2 years ago we brought in a governance model of policy governance rather than governing by the seat of your pants. We were at a point where it was micromanaging to the point where it was getting in the way. And we adopted a policy governance model, I first came in, one of the first acts, and when I started at IBM, it was the same way. I walked into IBM and they brought into the manufacturing floor and they gave me an operations manual and things to do, and it was that thick. I said, right, what are we gonna do with this? And I went about learning the job and never did get through the manual. I was given, when I started on the school board, a policy manual that was no less than 3.5, 4 inches thick. And I said, right, and what are we gonna do with this? But you lose track of them over time as to what is this thing. This is our policy manual right now, other than the 25 or so that are required by the state. And those are firearms policy, smoking policy, the very basic things that everybody needs. This encompasses all of the financial pieces. One of the hardest jobs we've had over the last 2 years is trying to understand, as a board, ours isn't to tell the administrators how to run the school. It is to set up a definition of what it is we want out of the school. When we have students leave, what is it? So other than the conditions we've put on Sean's leadership, you can do this, but you can't do these things. Typical, policy governance stuff, all things you can't do. We had an ends policy that says, these are the things we want. College ready, career ready, healthy, and, you know, good local and global citizens in a nutshell. We had a discussion back in July, June, May, they're all bleeding together, of college ready. So what does it mean when we have a student leave here and enter a system of post-secondary to be college ready? What does that mean? We had a very rich discussion, UVM, CCV, Albany Pharmaceuticals, I'm gonna forget somebody, Champlain, and had a great discussion. The next one is, it is and career ready. So it's college and career ready. This is not simply for the student that is gonna go directly into the workforce and not through college. It is either or. You're gonna go through college and then into the workforce. What does that student look like that is gonna succeed? What is that? What are the skills, the knowledge, the pieces that they need in order to be able to succeed? And so we brainstormed a group to, you know, who can help us with this discussion, and you guys answered the call. So I would like, if we could, maybe start with Joel in a very brief identification, so we have a name and a face, if you could.
Hi, I'm Joel Markwart, Vice President of Manufacturing at Twin Craft Skincare, just down the road. And I'm just very excited. I actually moved from Wisconsin about a year back to join Twin Craft, and I'm excited to get to know the community more.
Oh, wow.
I'm Brad Hackett. I'm also with Twin Craft Skincare. I'm the production manager. I grew up in Vermont, and am also excited to interact at this level.
Great.
I'm Andrea Baki. I'm with Spherion Staffing in South Burlington. I'm originally from Bennington County, moved up here in January. Very excited to be working with Spherion and connecting people with positions and clients with great candidates. And then, of course, meeting everyone here. So, thank you.
I'm also with Spherion Staffing, and Andrea is a recruiter, as am myself, and been with the company for almost 4 years. It's an amazing company, and it's amazing to work with so many different people at all different levels in all different organizations. And I'm excited to share some of the, I guess, lessons, feedback that I've garnered over the last many years.
And Tori, why don't we go right through the board, just a very brief, so everybody has at least a.
I'm Tori, I'm a school board member and a parent.
There you go.
I'm Jay, and I'm a school board member and a parent.
Mike DeCoro, and a lifetime Winooski resident, and for the first time in, I don't know, 26 years, I'm not a parent of a student in high school. They're on the other end at this point. So.
There's another end.
I'm Sean McMahon, and Superintendent of Schools in Winooski.
I'm Ladani Taylor. I'm a student representative, and thankfully, I do not have kids.
I'm Rainbow Chan. I'm also a student representative.
I'm Julian Portilla. I also live here in Vermont as of a few years ago, and I'm a parent of 3 boys, 2 of which are in the elementary school here.
I'm Jen Corrigan, a school board member and a parent of 4 high schoolers here.
And I'm Lisa Jensen. I'm from the United Way of Chittenden County. I work for an initiative called Working Bridges, which is really an employer collaborative around supporting, retaining, and advancing low to moderate wage earners. And my role for the last 6 years is to be on site at different employers to connect with employees around resources that they need outside of work, like childcare, transportation, housing, so they can focus on work and focus on advancing.
My name is Becky Capsalis. I'm the manager of recruiting and staffing strategies at what is now the University of Vermont Medical Center as of today, formerly known as Fletcher Allen. I have had a career in human resources that has included recruiting for close to 20 years and for 15 years here in Vermont at various organizations. I am also a parent to 2 children that go to school in Shelburne, and actually the daughter of a school board member on the Shelburne School Board. And I'm eager to be able to talk to everyone about what my thoughts are around career readiness, particularly for kids who are not, necessarily pursuing a college education, but also for those who are just out of college.
Thanks. I also had one contact, and I wanted to make the plug because she wanted to be here tonight, and something at the last minute came up, and that's Lori Miller from Rhino Foods. So she sent me a few thoughts, and been off work so long I can't get into my computer, but I'll get the thoughts back out in a minute. So I got to go to work Monday. I got to figure it out. So. Anyway, with that, thank you very much again, and. So I'd like to start maybe, Joel, with you. We had a pretty rich, quick, you were on a plane and in an airport and got some thoughts going back and forth at that point about what is it, and I'd like to touch on skills, the skill base of the kids coming out. So let me frame it just a little bit. You heard Robin talking about us getting involved with pre-K kids, 3 and 4 year olds. We get a lot of special needs kids. We have a lot of kids that we intercept. And as a district, as a school district, we're taking on a lot more responsibilities right up through till the time they leave. So we're charging through the policy governance, tying it back to that, we're charging Sean with his administrative staff with coming up with a set of criteria by which we're going to measure, the staff is going to measure for us, are we doing a very positive thing, and how are we doing year to year with regards to how kids are getting along in a workforce? I'm not sure exactly what that's going to look like, but that's what we're trying to get to, is some of those metrics. What do we look for? What would be in the kids? So Joel, I think if you wouldn't mind starting.
Sure.
What does that look like?
Well, over the last 20 or so years in manufacturing across a number of industries, I think one of the initial roadblocks that people have in approaching their career, whether it's engineers, whether it's people with MBAs, whether it's people that are 19 years old right out of high school or didn't graduate high school that are employed in manufacturing, those types of things, is I guess the focus on functional skills. They have to have functional skills or be able to be trained in them very quickly, and too often most people feel that that then is the sort of the end, or the they're not aware that they need to be thinking about other things beyond that, and so all of the discussions around their future progression, right? Their focus is on the simple functional skills, and so starting to educate people that that's the basic minimum. That's not what makes you above average or able to retain your position or for sure advance. And so moving beyond those functional skills to be able to look at things like mindset, things like performance criteria across a number of categories, things like capabilities depending on the type of position that they have, and becoming really far more well-rounded in all of those types of things. And if they're in a position to influence others, really taking a whole nother level of what that means to be effective in doing that. Really almost probably more of a focus on their perspectives, paradigms, mindsets, ways of being. Those types of things seem to be largely lacking in most folks, or for sure what holds them back.
And so from a functional skill standpoint, it's just the basics of the job. How do I run this particular machine? How do I get the most out of this particular, that very
right, and
narrow focus.
Yeah, and even if it's an engineer or something like that, right? Thinking only about their engineering function and not about a business and what has to occur within the business to be able to contribute in a meaningful way. And so actually almost in a bubble of especially those that are indirect folks in manufacturing, so those that aren't directly on the line, right? Thinking that jobs exist for a quality department or an engineering group or some sort of administrative group or something like that, and thinking that that's a job in and of itself, as opposed to these are support functions to make product, to satisfy customers, those types of things.
I think,
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think for us, you know, we assume when somebody's applied for a position and we're screening them, vetting them for a role, that they've applied and they have the basic skills to be able to perform that function. So much of our focus is on competencies. So in preparation for coming here today, and I was thinking about the competencies that we think about, you know, and that we're really focusing on. They vary somewhat from position to position, certainly from, you know, level to level. You know, what the competencies somebody needs to be a leader are different than somebody that might be at a staff level position. But some that I identified this evening before I came here were, you know, the competencies around communication, collaboration, contributing to a team, participating in meetings, managing their workload, being able to make decisions, being able to be adaptable, having a focus on quality and understanding why that's important, having energy, having tenacity, being able to manage their time, to prioritize things, to understand what a professional disposition even is and what the expectations are, that those are things that when I meet with young people, I typically, those are the areas that concern me. You know, that does this person have the communication skills that they're going to be able to get through and be successful here? Can they navigate the complexity of our system enough to survive? You know, that again, it's not real concerns about like their math and basic writing skills and whether they can use Microsoft Office and they can type. It's really about, are they going to be able to be successful working with 7,200 other professional people, you know, in an environment where people are really held accountable and are expected to be professionals.
That really connects to what, you know, you were saying about those kind of ways of being and perspective taking and seeing the big system, you know, seeing your job, but then also seeing how it connects to everything else, and how do you navigate that?
Yep.
It's interesting that Robin spoke about doing that in, you know, pre-K environment, and how that those skills actually start there a lot, oftentimes. How many people come into the work experience without that?
Yeah.
You know, at a working age. How critical that is.
I think about it with my 9-year-old, right? You know, you need to own it. You need to be accountable. Like, those are life skills that are so important, that if you have those as an adult in a professional work environment, they will take you a long way.
I think saying life skills is very important. Most of my time has actually been spent with people in developmental conversations around life skills, actually. And so then the result is that most areas of their life actually improve. And it really does take those universal principles that are beyond the job, actually, that will make somebody far more effective in whatever their position is.
Like what, Joe? What are you thinking of when you say life skills?
Well, I think things like being able to hold another person in a right way, honoring the human dignity of other individuals, can apply to any area of life. And if people can develop those skills, amazing things can happen in the workplace, right? Things like emotional intelligence, or being able to watch our thinking and detach, mindfulness, these types of things. Even in manufacturing, are very, very necessary from the lowest levels to the highest, and therefore being able to see their mental models or their framework and test assumptions, some of these types of things about how they're processing their inputs during the day.
I think from my perspective, you're speaking about being mindful at work and being focused, productive, and being safe. When you have some life stuff going on outside of work, that's going to impact that. So another opportunity is to help help students understand how to navigate, how to advocate, what is in my community. So if life happens, you know, case scenario, you get a new job and your fairly new used car breaks down. What's the problem solving skills? Because in order to maintain that job, you need to problem solve how you're going to get your car fixed.
So you don't take that extra baggage to work with you.
Right.
Separate
Exactly.
the two.
Well, you want to be able to
pieces.
get to work. I mean,
Get to
most,
work.
you know, three strikes, you know, if you don't show up to work.
And then once you're there, navigating the stresses that caused and being able to
Right.
emotionally regulate,
Right.
being here and putting that aside.
So I just kind of want to expand on what you're saying is, it sounds like you want to focus, right? You want to focus on that project that you need to work on at that time, which brings us into time management. So, and Hannah, my colleague here, put together this really great list, which I think everybody's kind of touched on a little piece here and there, of those soft skills that you need to have when you are, you know, entering a job or entering, you know, or a career, because those are two different things. Definitely. So, you know, one of those big ones is the time management, and how can I execute what I need to, how do I get to the end result of this goal? And what are those steps? So it's really planning and then making that happen. So, thank you. Nice segue. I don't know if you want to touch upon anything.
Well, I just think, you know, talking about time management and organizing one's time, I think part of that is learning, like you say, okay, I've got to be more organized. Well, that's great, but, you know, we can make lists, and I know for me, you know, I might make a list and toss it out the window, not the window, but recycle it. And, you know, it's learning when is the best time for you to do certain tasks. When is the best time for you to do other tasks? What is an area of maybe that you need to improve upon, and maybe you can delegate that task to somebody else who enjoys that. So, and I think kind of overall when I was thinking about this, I was thinking one of the things I learned when I was in high school from a teacher that was the most valuable piece of advice I learned was do what you say you will do. And that comes down to a lot of the soft skills that we're talking about in terms of having good communication, good follow-up. If you say you're going to follow up, do it. And, you know, also just in terms of being respectful and having those good interpersonal skills, that's something that I very often do see as an area that could be improved upon, is just being able to interact with a variety of people, including managers and, you know, people like myself. So.
And that connects back to what you're saying about the human dignity, being able to have conversations and meetings with people you may not agree with or even like, but being able to hold that professionalism and maintain the ability to continue to communicate, know how to hold it.
Right.
I often feel like the recipe to success is actually pretty simple, you know, that it's really, you know, it's being somebody who works hard, who is accountable, who is respectful, who, you know, is able to gain that credibility and is easy to manage, you know, like that'll take you really far in work. If you are somebody who is easy to manage, you meet, you know, generally meet expectations. It's kind of a simple formula when you think about it. You do need to have the basic skills, but there are a lot of, you know, there's probably a handful of essentials that can take you pretty far.
So I get works hard and accountable. What does easy to manage mean?
Well, I'm a manager of a team of 7, and so easy to manage would mean, you know, listening to what the expectations are, taking heed to them, showing a respect for them and why those should be met. Meeting those expectations are not only like within the job, but my expectations of, you know, this is what I expect of you to come in on time, you know, to be respectful to others, to be a communicator that is respectful, you know, that that is easy. A person that, you know, is somebody that is enjoyable to have on my team, and somebody who I will want to see on to further opportunity, you know?
Yeah. Great.
I'm just going to kind of expand on the being on time. As a recruiter, I interview people, as does my colleague Hannah, and many times I've had people walk in 5-10 minutes late, and that just speaks so much information. And I understand there's emergencies, things happen, and I really appreciate when that person voices that to me. But when someone walks in and and they basically just left their house to come to this interview, that's not a great step in the that's not a good direction to go in. So being on time, not showing up a half an hour early to the interview, because that can, you want to show respect for the person who's taking that time out of their day. But yeah, definitely being on time.
Meeting expectations,
Sure.
Yeah,
just showing that respect.
And if there is an issue, if someone's car does break down, we're all people. I think most of us have had a circumstance where, our car has had a problem, or the bus hasn't been on time, or what have you. But communicating that, I've had people who just breeze in, and they're like 20 minutes late to their interview or for their shift or what have you, and nothing is said. And so it doesn't need to be an excuse. It just needs to be a quick explanation. And if it's one time, I'm a person too. I understand that.
That's true.
To your question, Julian, what makes somebody easy to manage? One thing a number of years back with a leadership team that I had that really came out over several years of trying to figure this out. And one way that we ended up defining it was helping somebody to begin to see that their job is to facilitate a process as opposed to have an answer and be personally identified with that, right? The people spiral in a bad direction when assigned an engineer or a shop supervisor or whatever. They're assigned something and they think that their responsibility is to have an opinion or be 100% right, or their ego comes in and they own this, they become one with this solution to whatever their task was, and nothing good, a dozen things go in wrong directions from that. So really trying to help people focus on, okay, I was given a request, I have an input or a task or a project, and now I need to research the who, what, why, where, when, and how about that, and present back probably a conclusion, but a conclusion based on this information, and facilitate that process to whoever has the authority to then make those decisions, and not present it professionally one time. And if it's decided not to go that direction, or there's additional research needed, then to be able to go execute that, right? But it's emotional intelligence, it's mindfulness, but really it seemed to resonate with quite a number of folks, that if they can start to facilitate a process of their position as opposed to being so personally involved in it.
Yeah, and that sounds like it's something that's applicable at a lot of levels, right? I mean, we're not just talking building supercomputers, we're talking, I don't know, arrangement of the tables, cleaning supplies, all kinds of levels to that kind of mindset, it sounds like.
Right, because we would observe, right, somebody that's taking out the garbage, all frustrated because somebody knocked the bag down in the garbage can and it ruined his day, right? To somebody who's a director of 100 people and frustrated, right? So you just walk around, at least in manufacturing, and most people are frustrated most of the day, and it just is amazing when we can get people to start to disassociate with that and start to see it as facilitating a process. I think at TwinCraft over the last year, I think we've made very significant strides, and it's made a tremendous impact on quality of life throughout the day.
It's allowing people to recognize that they're part of a bigger thing. It's not just you know, I'm this title and I'm gonna do this and I'm in my own bubble. It's really that conscientiousness that we're all part of the same thing. Whether you're, you know, at the ground floor starting or you're the CEO, we're all part of the same thing and we're all working towards the same goal and towards the same end.
I think that speaks to that notion of, you know, educating people about understanding systems. How do systems work, you know? What's your part in a system? How do you navigate it?
One of the things I'm thinking about listening to all of you is the how do we help students raise awareness around what their strengths are? Because one of the things that I've learned, and I think there's a lot of great research, you know, with the book that you all read around strength-based leadership, you know, is productivity is going to go up, organizational health goes up when people are spending more time working in their strengths, while at the same time having the growth mindset where, you know, when you do have a weakness, you can work on it and you can access help, whether it's through mentorship or research or however you learn. And if we can help kids to get that level of self-awareness around thinking about themselves, then all those technical skills and everything, they kind of fall into place, I think.
It's interesting that you mentioned that book because actually that's a book that we use in leadership training at the hospital.
Yeah, we've used it here too.
Yeah, and it's true. And when you are able to identify your strengths, right, and you're using them and you're maximizing them, that also builds a level of confidence, which helps you to be successful also, right? And that's a huge part of it, is being a confident person and feeling like you have something to add and you are going to be able to influence, but in a way that is credible, you know?
Yeah. And for young kids, there's a lot of inexperience, and so they don't know what their strengths are yet. And so it's a lot of, you know, like Robin said, it's the playing, it's the experimenting, it's those kinds of things, and all those experiences that contribute to really defining what your strengths are.
And it's probably confusing because I think as a parent, you know, it's automatic that I want my kids to think they're strong in everything, right? And so that's probably tough also and confusing for a child.
Well, and that
think,
gets
wait,
into
that's not a strength of mine?
that gets into the mindset piece.
Right.
But it's okay to not be strong in everything, and you know, if you want to improve an area, you can.
Well, but aren't we more quick to sort of talk about our children and employees' weaknesses instead of talking about their strengths? I mean, I don't think a lot of adults probably know what their strengths are because nobody's probably ever asked them.
It is a change. It is a shift.
You got to ask the question.
It's a conscious shift to start focusing on strengths.
Yeah.
And a lot of what you hear in education too is about feedback and giving really good feedback. And in order to get to where you're describing, you know, you need to have people who are adept at that and being able to diagnose with kids, you know, and move them in a learning progression to grow, instead of saying, "Hey, great job." You know, what was great about that, and if there's pieces that we're missing as part of that process, how do you explicitly define those or ask really good questions to get people to learn?
I think also it's really important to be aware, if we're being aware this evening, that the word weakness is, you know, looked at as such a negative thing, when really it's an opportunity for someone to, because wherever we are in life, whether we're a CFO or we're working on the production line doing whatever we are, there's always room for improvement. There's always, in so many different areas of our lives. So that's really an opportunity to just identify what it is we can improve and then figure out that plan and then go for it from there.
You got to be big enough to acknowledge the fact that you do have something you need to work on.
Push the ego out of the way.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
It's hard
exactly,
work.
the ego.
Yeah, it's hard work. I think also in education we're saying, you know, mistakes launch new learning. Well, it doesn't feel good to make mistakes, you know, and it doesn't feel good to have weaknesses. And then how do you hold that so that you can find that space for opportunity?
Especially if you get a bad grade for making a mistake.
I know, right?
Sure, it's a good grade.
But that's okay, because that's a consequence. You also have to have
Yes.
consequences.
Sure.
Right, right,
True,
right.
but with productive feedback too.
Positive
and I think-
light.
Exactly.
So
I'm not
we're
saying that, but
advocating,
you gotta
yeah.
know the difference, and I don't know. I'm not gonna really talk too much.
Well,
'Cause I work with very little children, and I see it starts at a very low age of self-regulation, and
Some
you
of it never
have to
changes.
get that piece, because if somebody doesn't know how to self-regulate, they're not gonna know how to get to work on time,
Right.
Right.
because they don't think outside of their little box. So.
So positive reinforcement is put, I understand the consequences aspect of it.
Yep.
Definitely, I know what you're saying.
And not to put it in a downside of a consequence. Every consequence is a good consequence,
Sure.
because they're going to learn from it. That's all playing is learning. Well, I built a tower and I pulled this one out and it fell apart. That's the consequence of a mistake. And you just have to put it in the right frame of mind, and positive reinforcement, and ask the questions of, well, what could you have done?
You're also
That's
likely
to
working.
simplify it, but
You're also likely working on something you don't necessarily know inside and out. So
Right.
you're going to take a chance and try something.
right, which.
Hopefully, it's an educated guess, so it
And
doesn't
then I also have been
tear
in the
everything
hiring
down. But
process, so I get the whole, if you're late for work or an interview, or even as I'm a child care provider, even a parent that doesn't show up for an interview, I don't accept them into my program after that, because they're not reliable. They're never going to. That means they're probably not picking their child up on time either. So it's huge. It's huge.
So it also seems like there's some critical thinking and problem solving.
I'm so glad you said critical thinking. I've been waiting to jump in, because
Planning and the executive functioning and the.
it's critical thinking is a part of that simple recipe, actually, that I speak of, and that oftentimes I'll hear at the end of a interview. It may be a really high level interview. It would have lasted 3 days, and the sentiment that I might get back is, I just don't know if that person has the critical thinking skills. They've been grilled on everything, the technical aspects of the job, and then it comes down to I just don't know if they have the critical thinking skills.
Which is so important.
So important.
So important. That's really, to me, that's almost like the base, right? I mean, so many building blocks come off of that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, it's good, because I feel like it was speaking back to what you were also speaking to too, of sort of that outside life of being able to think critically and problem solve with the things that can keep you from
Exactly.
being in the job.
Yes, and I'm thinking about, I'm in the shoes of a senior in high school, and maybe I take the path where I'm going to go and I'm going to start I'm going to get a job. Well, I might be just focused on, I'm going to do a resume, I'm going to interview, I'm going to get a job, I get my paycheck. So there's so much more to it. The expectations, the critical thinking, the problem solving. How does my role fit into this organization that I'm working for? And how what's in my community in case I need the support? So
Maybe choosing the right job. Like just saying yes to a job, sweet, I got the right boy. Wait a second, my strengths aren't.
And if they haven't been taught consequences, and they haven't been taught that, then they may not even think so what, I'm late twice, and then all of a sudden the third time they're fired.
Right.
So
It's not their fault.
They've
Right.
never been
Blaming it on
taught.
someone else is not part of the recipe.
So
To kind of touch upon community involvement, and networking is great in anything that you're doing, of course, but that getting involved in the community, for me, I love it. It really helps in so many aspects. I'm talking about confidence, building your confidence. You get to meet some really amazing people. You get to, volunteer with whatever the cause is that is important to you, whether it be environmental or you're a big sister and helping someone grow. So I really think that really helps in career readiness, because you get to see things outside of what your bubble is, right? Because, maybe you do something environmentally, which is great for your job, but you get to go and do something completely, different, or something that you didn't know you had this strength. So I think that really helps too, is community involvement and networking, and seeing, you learn something from every person you meet, whether you realize it at that moment or 10 years down the line. So I think that's important as well.
As I'm thinking about real time seeing resumes of young people. I might see a resume of a child who, or a young adult, who has been, has gone to Cornell, has had, you know, extracurricular activity, but at the end of the day, they've not had any work experience. That's the other thing we need to balance as educators and as parents, that yes, pursuing education is really important, and sports are important, and those teach special things. But for me, if I had somebody that perhaps went to a community college and had worked during high school years and college years, and I know that they've had experience being part of a team and have learned all of those skills, that person is more appealing to me at the end of the day than somebody who has a degree from Cornell. Now, with that said, it obviously depends on the position at the hospital in particular, but I think we're losing sight of, like, we need, not only do kids need all of these skills, but they need to have some work experience too, you know? Like, that's pretty important, and it's an important part of understanding being accountable, you know, and understanding the value of a dollar, or, you know, that that's all really important.
Balancing those other life skills, you know, not everybody can go to college.
Right.
So, you know, it's easy to put that filter on and say, oh, you didn't go to college, you're not going there. And, you know, just making that break to say, hey, you know, okay, you didn't go to college, what'd you do? And then you start actually digging into that deeper and going, wow, you know, many people have many other life experiences that are probably far more beneficial to a work experience than spending 4 years or longer in college.
Absolutely.
And Becky, when you mentioned work experience, not necessarily pertinent to that specific job, but that they have worked, they have been part of another team in an environment of
Absolutely.
work.
Like, I'll give the example, an entry-level position at the hospital is like working in our call center, like, or as a registration representative, right? You can get those basic customer service skills in so many ways and so many jobs, you know, working at McDonald's. Like, I often say, like, working at McDonald's, to me, if I see that on a resume, I think kids poo-poo that, but I'm like, hallelujah, like, this person has worked at McDonald's. They know what it takes to, you know, succeed there. There's high expectations. So I think that we need to not lose sight of the importance of any job. You know, it's interacting with the public, it's understanding what customer service expectations are. So hopefully I answered your question, but yeah.
No, that's what I was
Yeah.
thinking you were after.
I can tie in even just to, like, community service and networking, that experience, you know, just running school programs and getting kids educationally, as a, you know, you look at it, how to get students more into those kind of programs where it may not be about making money, but outside of somebody just telling them what they have to do and what their expectations are, you know, from a school point and a college point. And it's all experience.
Okay.
So.
I have a question. And it may sound very obvious, and forgive me for being so literal, but what about the hard skills? I think it's great to be pie in the sky and having all these social skills. However, if a child or young adult can't read, has struggles with basic arithmetic, how does that play into you guys with your...
I think for me, you know, if we require a high school diploma for a job, which most of ours do, not all of them. For instance, in environmental services, you don't have to have a high school diploma at the hospital, but we assume that if you have earned your high school diploma, you have those basic skills. So that typically would not be a top concern of ours. We assume that you've proven that you have those basic skills, and if you have your bachelor's degree, we assume that you've achieved that level. So I think that would be rare that we would come across a situation where we were like, wow, we feel duped. Like we thought this person had graduated from high school. We assumed they knew how to read, they know how to write. We feel like we were fooled, and they don't have that.
I think that it's required, unfortunately, in most positions, and those are sort of the basics that folks have to have. On the other hand, though, I think manufacturing in this country, for those who don't have those skills or struggle with them, or don't have a lot of the other things that we are describing, I think a lot can be done to make lower end manufacturing jobs a stepping stone for those folks, with organizations that would embrace that, to be able to fill those lower end manufacturing jobs and keep the jobs in this country, for example, instead of going to low cost countries, and make it into a positive experience. And those that can then develop after 2 or 4 years to be able to turn on a machine, to be able to work more with their reading and writing, or if English isn't their first language, maybe company provided, or in some way trying to open opportunities for some of those folks to have chances.
We see the reading comprehension and writing ability, that stands out for me in resumes. A lot of times, resumes are, maybe the formatting is okay, but words are just misspelled. They're not, and they're correct. The diction is strange, the syntax is strange. And then you meet with them and chat with them, and they might go over like some information, and it's clear that they don't understand what's been put in front of them. And so that does sometimes, come up, and it's, I think for us, even things like improper words being used, like unprofessional language, which I guess, it's kind of a soft skill, but, saying thingy as opposed to item or maybe thing.
Stuff.
Right. To misspelling words, or just using text formatting language in an email. Accepting a position, saying things like that. So I don't know that we see it with the arithmetic, but we do see it with the language ability. It's not across the board. It's certainly not something that most of our applicants are very, very, they are very competent in those areas, but we do see it in a small percentage.
It stands out when you do.
And it's a great point. I think that the underlying dynamic there is the ability to switch codes, to code switch from informal friend dynamic to my family dynamic to my school dynamic to then my work dynamic, right? And kids are doing it all the time, and I'm not sure that we're ever sort of showing them that they're doing that when they do it. And I wonder if we could, and that's a really interesting point. The inability to know when to code switch and to change registers, I think, is probably a big part of what we're calling professionalism. Where we know certain behaviors are acceptable in one context and not in another. And I know that every kid is doing it on a daily basis. They just may not be aware of it. And
Adults are doing it.
What's that?
Adults do it.
Oh, yeah, we do it all the time and have no idea, right? But that's part of the great thing about school, is that you sort of become literate in your own experience. And that, I think, helps to figure out, sort of navigate these, complicated situations, new situations.
Right, because there's social media, which is very big, right? Social media is amazing. It can be amazing, and it also can, if the student or the adult even doesn't carry themselves in a very professional manner. Potential employers, they will check out your LinkedIn if you have one. They'll check out your Facebook page. If your Facebook page is open and it's unprofessional and you're using swear words and doing this and that and the other thing, and people see this, and then you come in for an interview, yes, I'm just going to think, is this person really going to represent Spherion and themselves at the client that we possibly send them to in a good way, or is that going to
Yeah, moving forward, that's more and more going to be an issue, is needing to make sure that kids understand the implications of their persona in social media and how that, potentially could affect their career,
In the oddest ways and the oddest places.
Right.
Come back.
And it's hard, I'm sure, to understand that when you're 14.
Sure.
Yeah.
But we do need to, I don't even know as a parent how I would be dealing with that. It's going to be a tough thing that we're going to have to be dealing with more and more, prepping our young people for being successful and being savvy enough when they're young to know, how that could affect them.
And it can be positive. I mean, if a person utilizes it, whether they're a young adult, very small, because some people are, some kids are on there and they're very young, or adults are utilizing social media. It's a great way for businesses to connect business to business. It's a great way for networking. There's so many positives, but it's how we use it that really will affect us and those around us in whatever way we choose to. So I think that's really important. It can be a good thing, for sure.
Yeah.
One of the interesting changes we've seen over the last 20 or 30 years, is, especially in the school systems, are the teaching kids what to learn, because they're going to use it. They'll go into a manufacturing environment. They'll go into this or that. There are a very limited number of areas to go in. You could tell them what to learn. Can't tell them what to learn anymore.
Yeah.
You have to tell them how to learn, and then hope they can figure it out and keep changing. And the unenviable position we're putting Sean in right at this point is, how do you take, Becky, you mentioned you work with your daughter, and you work to make sure that she understands the things now, whether she's listening or not, she is, I'm sure. Whether it's sinking in, it will, guaranteed it will. But you're doing that. In a lot of cases, we as a school system are doing that for kids who aren't getting it at home. I got a son of mine who mentored a kid who is now a master's in education and teaching, who had probably the worst home life you've ever seen. But he made it because he had help. And so, how do you keep putting that back into the system and letting people know that you do make an impact?
Yeah, I try to draw correlations as much as I can. So as another example, I just had my performance review, a month ago, and talking about how as an adult you still get a report card, basically, I try to draw back in my professional life. I try to make the impact with my kids, see, you're still going to get this when you're an adult. It doesn't end at school, when you're done with school. And I get graded on similar things as an adult. Let's talk about that. It is interesting how the cycle doesn't change that much in terms of what it takes to be successful. And
if you want to keep doing it, you got to keep moving forward.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, if LaDanya and Rainbow, does any of this surprise you guys? Is this more or less what you expected to hear? Is this a little different? Do you have questions about career readiness from this distinguished group of folks?
The whole McDonald's bit actually surprised me a little bit, because I always hear a lot of the grading comments about working at this
right.
job. But I actually really respect people who work in those positions.
Me
because,
too.
They'll probably get a lot of bad customers, and I think it takes a lot of patience and dedication to work in those kind of jobs.
The training that you can receive, and think about what a huge corporation McDonald's is, or Burger King, and how dialed in they are on their training. For me, as an employer or somebody who's, looking at people's past experience, I'm not kidding when I say I really am hallelujah, this is great. This saves us a lot of work. They've already gone through all of this training. And I know from when I was a teenager and looking for work, that we always were sort of oh, McDonald's. But at the end of the day, the training that you get, one would get there at a place like that, is pretty top notch.
Well, I kind of have a different point of view because my parents own a restaurant, so I've worked in that kind of system before, and yes, I have managed through many problems with customers sometimes, and I feel like it is true because my parents, when they're looking for employees, they try to look for work experience so that we don't have to do the training. So it's just like you said, work experience is really important, and I guess that maybe in the long run when I go look for a job as I get older, I'll think back to the experience I've had working with my parents. It's paid off.
Absolutely. I mean, being in an entrepreneurial family, just what you've learned, I imagine, what you've learned through that is going to serve you well.
Anything?
One thing that's interesting about this too is when you look at the research around, since the federal government came out and said every student will be college and career ready, then everybody ran and created these groups and said, we got to define this now. And one of the kind of common pieces that comes out is the separation into academic, technical, and employability skills, knowledge, dispositions. And I think all of those have been touched upon here. They really focus on the literacy and the math when they talk about the academic skills, but it's not limited to that. And then the technical, really knowing, and talking in a school context, how do you allow students to really pursue work experiences so that they can gain some of those things and figure out what they like and what they don't through those experiences. And then the employability, the time management, the being on time, and the awareness of who you are, and even leadership skills and so forth. So it's all the practical experience that everybody from this table is bringing and talking about is spot on with what the research is saying too.
Although I find it interesting that the proportion of time that we talked about employability, I think, was greater than the technical or the academic, which is a big surprise for me.
Yeah.
At the Roland conference the other day, Roland conference that we were all at, one of the grit presenters was talking about some research where, would you rather have an employee who had more grit or more technical ability? Grit meaning sort of persistence and ability to persevere and continue on, and some tremendous percentage of employers responded with grit because the other you could learn on the job, and so sort of that employability piece.
Roll grit back into the school. How do you measure it? How do you see it? How do you instill it? How do you look for it? Right?
Well,
Those are the
it
challenges.
seems like that's a prior education prior to moving towards proficiency-based was we were just content, academic driven, and all of a sudden we're really starting to find out that, like our conversation here, that's the smaller portion of the pie because you can always in some ways teach that.
I think
specific to the job that you're in.
Specific to the
making
job.
students aware of getting their assignments on time, being to practice on time, showing up for class, not skipping. The accountability, teaching them how to be accountable. That will make them employable.
And also, going off that, that it's not enough to just do your job.
Right.
You have to, if you want, unless, that's all you're after, but even then, you have to want something more. And, a lot of systems are based on merit. So it's, you can't just say, well, I do, these 5 things. Well, congratulations. What else are you contributing to the organization? What are you doing that's above and beyond? How can you help the organization in a better fashion? So just, I guess, striving for something greater than just status quo.
I think that was part of Joel was kind of getting to that when, thinking about the whole with my little piece. My piece is here, but you're also working in this entire section. So.
And when you think about a performance reviewer, especially at the hospital, for us, if you are just doing your job, you're meeting expectations or maybe you're successful, it's not until you've gone over and above what you've done in your job that you are excellent or outstanding, you know, that we expect that of you working here. Like that's the bare minimum. You need to be doing your job, and you know, good job, you're doing your job, but that's not excellent, that's not outstanding.
Part of the, I think, grit or seeing the whole system is having a person start to be able to ask themselves, what value am I adding with what I'm contributing? I think grit or you know, scrapper type people, they have a sense for, I'm going to go after something so I can weed out those things that aren't going to get me where I want to go, right? But even for those that aren't that driven, there is a sense, especially with people in their first 10 years of their career, quite honestly, they think if they're given a task and they go put a bunch of effort into it and make a pretty PowerPoint presentation, that the team should be impressed, and any of the whoever their boss is going to ask, okay, and how does this advance, whether it's growing sales or, you know, reducing expenses, growing profit margin? And if you can't directly, so taking the focus off, it isn't just to get the task done,
right,
actually, like they're used to with assignments. So if there's a way earlier, we can start to have them question themselves and the project for what it will advance, what it will contribute, what value will be added at a systems level or at an organization level or a team level. Potentially, I really was never happy about doing team exercises in high school or university settings. I always found them very frustrating, but I think they're extremely valuable in having to figure out how to add value in such a way that the team actually finds it valuable.
Yeah, what impact did you have? I think about that when I read resumes, you know, and I'm evaluating who is the best candidate for the job. It's not the resume. I don't want to see, you know, managed payroll, you know, cleaned the tables every day. It's not task oriented. It's what did you do that made an impact on that organization? That's really what makes you valuable. You know, it's not just doing the tasks of every day. Again, congratulations, like you're doing the basics of your job, but like, what have you done to really move the needle, to really make an impact? That's important. And so as you think about it in education, you know, how do we focus on, you know, congratulations, look at the impact that you made by whatever you did, rather than like, oh good, you followed the steps, you know. And I'm not an educator, so perhaps that is how things are, but that's how I would hope they would be, so that people could be successful in work, understand how that impacted something.
Another thought that I had earlier when we were talking about strengths or weaknesses, at TwinCraft, we really, the operations, the 8 core operations leadership folks on my team, really spent many meetings trying to unpack some material that I had developed with previous teams in other organizations, and so we've distilled 4 main capabilities for our circumstances, 4 main performance ways of doing beyond their basics, and then 4 main mindsets or ways of being, and then 5 additional for those that are leaders or influencers and those types of things. And so the challenge is, I was just having a conversation with the president of TwinCraft on Monday. We're looking at rolling out whether you performance management, performance coaching, performance appraisal, whatever types of systems, looking at all of the concerns or struggles that many of us have experienced with those things through the years. And so we're looking at what are these 12 or 19 categories, right? And I'm weak, actually, I think, in quite a number of them, and I think a lot of folks are weak in quite a number of them. So we got into a return on investment, right? So for-profit business, return on investment. And, okay, if they're insufficient in any of these, depending on their level, and what's required with their position. If they're insufficient, well, maybe they can't be in that position. But if they're satisfactory in all of these primary categories, do we really want, even though they're weaker than a lot of their teammates on half or more of them, do we really want them to increase, going back to strengths-based, these weaknesses? Does the team really need it? What's the ROI for them personally in their career? To the team and to the organization, we don't need a bunch of the same people, right? And so then getting down to, okay, you know what? They're actually above average on a certain thing, and if we can take that higher, the ROI is going to be so significant. Or here's 2 or 3 that are sort of satisfactory, and if we could build those over the coming years, do we believe that could have a significant impact for their opportunities in life, but also for the organization? So we continue to debate and wrestle with those things when we talk about strengths and weaknesses, and too often people feel like if they have any weaknesses that this is a bad thing, and too much effort is actually focused on that when the return isn't going to be that much in their life for overcoming that weakness, depending on where they're going. If they're going to be an engineer and they're not good at math, well then yeah, they probably need to improve that weakness if they want to remain an engineer, right? But depending on their position.
Well, it's balancing that throughout the team too, and really looking at those, you know, the strengths and the weaknesses, figuring out how they all work together. We've really seen and spent a lot of time really engaging everybody and realizing that everybody wants to contribute in some way, and not everybody's going to contribute in the same way. Instead of judging everybody to say, okay, everybody's got to give this much. Not everybody's going to, you know, this much isn't the same for everybody in the team. So it's kind of really, instead of judging them on that, it's okay, what can everybody contribute? They all want to contribute, and balancing that through the whole process as well, which is interesting.
Well, it's amazing how much that sounds like our conversations around individualized learning, you know?
That's what I was thinking too.
One size doesn't fit all, you know, people are attracted to different things, they're better at different things, and how can we cater to that rather than try to, you know, stamp out these equal looking things? Oh, wow.
Manufactured.
Yep, the widgets are all different for sure.
Widgets are different, right?
Yeah.
Thank
Good.
goodness.
LaDanya Rainbow, any final thoughts?
So, I feel like, just for me, I feel like most of the time I'm more focused on college than careers. And so once I've hit 16, and then I'm gonna hit 18, I'm gonna be shoved into the world of careers, and I'm gonna be kind of lost. So I think this is actually really important to be learning what it takes. I feel like I've given a cheat sheet on what to figure out, and it really helps. So.
And at some point, getting that back to your peers.
Yeah, but
That's part of the reason you're here, is as a representative to look back in with your peers too.
Well, also, about career, since I'm more on the younger side, I just turned 15 recently, and just thinking about careers and jobs, I'm still kind of stuck in that fog, but after this discussion, I felt like a lot of that fog has been cleared up, because those questions about, oh, what do they need from me, what do they want from me, what do they look for in someone that's deeming or impressive to them. And it felt like this kind of helped clear up the fog that I had.
And maybe that you don't have to decide for sure what that one career is that you're going to choose, when you realize there are just some basics that will help you succeed in most anything. Because it is scary to try to be like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? What's my future going to look like?
Can you connect some of the things that were said here to what's being asked in school?
A lot of it critical thinking and problem solving. We hear a lot about that in school, and I know our final exams are going to be focused on that, and a lot of the class plans is focused on critical thinking, so I really appreciate working on those skills, because I feel like it's one of those that you really have to work on to strengthen. So.
Right. Tori, anything?
This is great. It's really amazing to hear, you know, sort of this, again, like what we call soft skills, which seems to sort of take over the majority of it, mindsets and perspective taking and communication, something that we got from our community graduation expectations, which was critical thinking, problem solving, persistence, cross-cultural understanding, you know, those types of things that it's nice to see that it does align with what our community wants from our kids as well as what the workforce is also looking. And now it's up to the administration to provide those opportunities for practice.
Well, yeah, interestingly, from that perspective, they, you know, they're tasked with coming up with a way to get it into the system and push it through the system.
And then measure it.
Measure it and then convince
the
us
impact.
that is what we actually asked for.
Yeah, yeah.
Is that what I asked for? Then we got to figure out whether that is in fact what we asked for.
Yeah.
Well, you know, more and more as employers, we're moving towards like assessments at the time of people applying. It just makes me think, like in terms of a measurement, if we're using these assessments that are based on competencies
Right.
coming into an organization, I would imagine that there could be some iteration of that tool to be able to measure that as kids are graduating.
And knowing what that tool is before they leave so that you can instill it in them before they
Right.
get to you on the other end.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Be great to work together on that end of it.
I think also the whole social thinking and mindfulness piece, you know, of knowing that that's been something that we're driving through our system pre-K 12, we're recognizing that these are skills that are going to be long-term beneficial to life as well as career. Yeah. Sweet.
Jay, any
No, I'm all
other
set.
thoughts? Julian?
I just think we're in a really interesting time in education, you know, where we're sort of transitioning from the 3 R's to a bunch of other stuff, where you still got to do the 3 R's, but yet, you know, have this other broader focus. These intangibles, you know, that you all are describing really make good employees. But it's funny that, you know, you don't exactly ask for that when you put out a job description, right? You ask for the sort of technical and academic stuff.
We do now, though.
Do you? Do you still put more
Yeah,
than that?
absolutely identify those competencies
Uh-huh.
in job description. Not everybody does, but I think more and more organizations are really putting that out there.
Right, be making the sort of implicit more explicit.
Yeah, yeah.
That's great. That's great. And the other thing that struck me is I was watching these guys create the Google Doc about the notes of this conversation. The speed with which they are recording our conversation is astounding. And I mention that because I have to say that in my career, one of the most important parts of my abilities as an administrator and as a mediator is to be able to type quickly.
That is
And it's I think it's like the most undervalued skill, you know, in terms of technical skill. And you guys are about the fastest type I've ever seen. So good
She
on you
mans
guys.
the front desk and the register, and whenever I go to a restaurant, it's just like, God,
It's incredible.
That's a hard skill that comes in handy when applying for a data entry position, so just putting that
Well,
out
and
there.
on up, and on up. I mean, what I'm saying is that it's incredible how useful, you know, to be able, because what it is, you're sort of transferring what's in your mind and in your ears onto something, a medium that is shareable with others, and that's instantly useful, you know? I mean, it's
like walking
a
into
really, really great skill.
Especially when you're assigning tasks coming out of a meeting to get done later. You want everybody to know what they signed up for,
Yeah.
who signed them up for.
Yeah.
Sure.
Exactly.
Jen, thoughts?
I have lots of thoughts, but I think in a way it's just really refreshing to see, because somehow the technology just speeding so fast, and I think some things have gotten lost of just the basic skills of working and career readiness, and, you know, like academics has put such a huge, I don't want to say burden, but such expectations on students. And I think somehow the just normal tasks of day-to-day living have been lost in the school districts. So I think it's nice to just start seeing it come back into the school and really helping students just, you know, learn how to be able to be career ready without thinking they have to go to college, because it's not for everyone. So it's just nice to have the conversation and see that, you know, it's coming back, and it's not going to be in a new way, of course.
And you can get that college education. So we offer, for instance, tuition reimbursement for degrees that are relevant. So that's an option for kids too, to think about that. Like if you're not ready for college right now, let's wait till you're ready, and maybe your company would even support you financially in doing that.
And Fletcher Allen is, UVM Medical Center is one
Thank
of
you.
my employer sites, and there are employees that definitely take advantage.
Yeah.
I work a lot with environmental services and the call centers, a lot of entry level, and quite a few employees take advantage of that tuition remission and move on to get their associates and bachelors and figure out what they want to do.
Yeah, it's much
At
more
a time where
pertinent.
they're able to
Right.
better make those choices.
Right.
Yeah. It's much more pertinent when you finally know what you want to do to go after it, especially if somebody else is paying for
Yeah.
it. I'm thinking as I go through this, Becky, your comment about looking for work experience, things like internships. I don't know if any kind of internships are available, and as they come out through the school, to give some of these kids the leg up in some of those areas. But just the task ahead of us in not only converting over from, I got out of high school with a 4.0. I got out of high school and I was competent. I was proficient in all my tasks. How is that going to be accepted by employers or, higher ed? That's a very big shift that we're moving through, but it'll be interesting to see how that works. And hopefully we stay out in front of it. And that's why we're doing this tonight. And again, we greatly appreciate your taking your valuable time to come with us. I know you've probably been at it all day, if not a little bit more than that, so.
It's a great opportunity for us as employers to say what we need, so thank you for having us here.
I've got a vision in my head of having, 6 or 8 people in a forum with not 6 adults and 2 kids, but 40 kids or 50 kids, and having this exact same discussion to have them understand, what does this mean when I walk out of these doors? What am I going to run into?
Yeah.
But just to have a little bit of, that kind of a thought. And so you may not necessarily be completely off the hook since you're in the book, so to speak, but, we may in fact be back after you at some point. So
Gives us a good perspective, because it's really interesting listening to Lavinia and Rainbow. I'm also a parent. I have a 14-year-old that, you sort of start going, hey, what do you really need? And as we work through our working lives, there's multi-generations going through every stage of it, and be able to understand those changes, to sit and, when I went to school, it's so different than my kids going to school, and, you guys are very proficient with, your iPads or your whatever you got going, but you probably have 4 or 5 other devices going somewhere most of the time, and that's different than what we had. Absolutely. So there's a lot of stuff that we need to learn too. So that's critical.
for sure. So with that, I would again thank you very much for your time and coming along,
Thanks
and
for having us.
if hopefully we may be back to ask again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll leave you there.
And from Twin Craft's perspective, any folks that that maybe aren't college
2 or
bound,
3 minutes.
that may want a period of a career or a longer term career in manufacturing, get a hold of me. I can give you contact information, or I know that Mike or Julian have my information, but we definitely would like to explore over the coming years ways to help those that aren't going to go to college to also have career opportunities possibly.
Great, thanks.
Ask those questions real time both ways, because it is a two-way.
It is. Yes.
All right, so.
127.
Thank you,
Lisa, thank you very much. Greatly appreciated. So in my haste to get to item 7, we skipped over item 6, which is the consent agenda. And do I have a motion to accept the consent agenda?
Yes, so moved.
Second.
And is there any other discussion?
No, again, great reports.
I would, all those in favor of accepting the consent agenda, aye?
Aye. Aye.
Those opposed? Okay. All right, very good. Superintendent monitoring report, communication and support to the board. We have a discussion item here, and then as is our as is our practice as we've gone forward here, we will accept this in the consent agenda on the next time around. Any thoughts, clarifications, needs?
I have a few questions,
Yep.
actually.
All right.
I kind of went
I do
through
too.
Okay.
You do?
Yeah, I do.
So, can I start?
Yes,
No,
please.
Please.
So in section 1, under the interpretation, and I guess I don't have a problem with the interpretation, but should we be more clear about what data should be passing from the superintendent to the board? You know, an example that I wrote down relative to the ends was like graduation rates. We had students graduate in June. You know, my thoughts would be that would be a time to establish baselines of saying this is where we're at with graduating students and what's going to happen over the next 2 to 3 years. Are more students going to graduate or less, et cetera, because that is like one of the main parts of our ends statement. Or am I getting too specific?
Well, I think my only interpretation with this particular policy and communication to the board is it's outside of the other things that we're measuring for other reasons. And I think just the specific example you meant, graduation rates, I think fits in under the ends.
Okay.
And I think it would be reported in that format. Specific to the graduation rates. I don't know if you had any other examples, because I think if you get into try to get into a fully defined list of everything, you're going to miss.
Well, maybe something that would help in the language of the interpretation there is to say, such as, but not limited to. And the
Okay.
board then always has the right to say, you know, turn to the superintendent and say, hey, we'd like you to prepare this data, you know,
Okay.
and if the board agrees that they would like me to do that, I will go do it.
Okay. I just didn't
Oh, that
know
is
how
simple
far we
language,
were
Jeff.
going with that. And the other
Yeah.
question
Yeah.
I had
Such as, but not
is
limited to.
along the same lines, and maybe
Number
this
4?
is more specific, is number 4. At what point with anticipated media coverage should we expect to be hearing from, I guess, from Mike via Sean? That's the route. You
Right.
report to Mike, Mike's gonna report out to us.
Yep.
Classic example, and it doesn't have to be a positive or a negative, but like we had the report on TV of English language learners in the school a couple of weeks ago. And what's happening here, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I didn't hear anything. I heard it from the news first.
Right.
And I guess what should we expect, and when should we expect it? I'd like that question clarified, and I honestly, I don't care.
Yeah.
But if we're gonna have it in a policy,
Right.
if it's media coverage, I guess my thoughts are, and when I've talked to other boards around the state who are policy governance boards, if the superintendent has foreknowledge in their districts that the media is gonna be coming in the school, the board has always sent something, it's a short blurb. This is why they're coming, this is what's gonna be discussed.
Yep.
If you receive a call from a member of the public, this is what the whole, you know, rather than somebody calling you at 6:03 on the 6 o'clock news saying, hey, what's going on here? Or, you know, 7 o'clock, hey, did you just watch the news? What's going on up at the school, blah, blah, blah. Now, obviously some media events, should there be some type of emergency and things are unfolding.
Right.
That
Or
sports.
sports.
Or sport, yeah, or sports, yeah,
That would, like,
obviously,
please
yeah.
don't call me every
yeah,
time.
you know,
It'll be announced, the score
Well,
will be announced in the
But
paper.
that is a good
I get,
question, you
it
know,
is, yeah.
because in this policy, it says anticipated media coverage, and there's no grain size descriptors around that.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not good, it's
So that's
not
a
bad,
great
it's
discussion
not.
for us to have, you know,
Yeah.
so, you know, yeah, so what would be the board's expectations for me around that? Is it
I feel like in the past, the measuring stick that I feel like you use, Mike, and I'm putting words in your mouth there, so correct me, but I feel like when you have called me to warn me about possible things when I have felt like they have risen to the level of sort of media curiosity that they might be looking for more information and therefore they might call me. There's plenty of things that the media might be interested in that they would never call me about. That's a pretty gray sort of definition there, but that's my sense of your measuring stick in the past. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's been pretty much my calls out to you have been heads up.
Yeah.
Something, just in case.
But media-
In
go
this
ahead.
case, I guess it comes back to Jay's example, like they were in here doing a relatively positive piece of this is why, depending on how the listener caught up to it, but it was not necessarily a negative event. So I guess.
But it also was a different
poorly-
interpretation than we would have thought.
It was poorly
I
represented.
didn't even see it.
It was poorly represented.
But that begs the question then of should it be any? Because I don't have control over what the coverage is going to necessarily look
And
at.
I guess my thought
look at
would be,
when it comes
because
out.
Tori made something, made a comment that I never thought of. Obviously, you're not going to inform us on Friday Night Frenzy that they show on what's happening in Division III sports or whatever. But I would almost say an expectation would be reasonable of saying anything that's not a non-standard recurring event for media coverage.
Yeah.
Something that and you can use your best judgment. I would say that. Something that is not your average a sporting event or something that happens every year. It comes down the pike. It's unexpected. It's not going to be reoccurring.
Yeah, I like the recurring. That's really.
I think
That gives like
make sense?
some measurement to it. So like if they came and did a piece on iLab or on proficiency,
Right.
kind of like maybe what they did with English language. Like I didn't see it, so I have no idea what they came in here for. But it was something specific to sort of report on what's going on within our school.
Just so you know.
Yep.
Just so you know before
it's-
it comes out.
And it's exclusively for knowledge, keeping the board knowledgeable and informed, and it's definitely not an invitation for the board to meddle or tamper or make decisions of any kind, because
No, but it gives you the information because, like you said, you could you're walking the dog and your neighbor says, "Hey, did you see that?"
Right, and you're going, huh?
Yeah.
So let me ask the next question though. Should we edit, we don't have action item on here now, but for a future agenda item, would we bring this particular policy back in and edit that piece? I think that normally the answer would be yes, to clarify that particular piece. Is that something
so that we
wanna bring
can
back?
read the new
Just
to bring it back so we can read the new edit to
right,
make sure
right,
it,
including
okay.
anticipated media coverage. Should it be clearer? If that's fine, just the way we've defined it, non-recurring, or do we want to put non-recurring in here?
One is the policy, the other is the interpretation, right?
That's right, that's right. So 4 is what's in the policy, and all it says is including anticipated media coverage.
Well, and the interesting part of it now, you're talking in the interpretation.
No, I'm talking about in
the
this
policy,
piece
the
here where it
In the
says 4
policy
is the
itself.
policy itself.
Okay.
Should that have the word recurring? We can't decide that here, but should we bring it back to add that?
I think we should.
Relatively
I think it
innocuous
adds,
and simple.
I think
so-
it adds clarity.
And I think
Because
that's
the
what we
truth
do.
is, with Sean's particular statement here, it's acceptable because I believe it does pass the litmus test of being would a reasonable person find this a legitimate interpretation? And remember, it's ultimately the board's authority, but if you were to take the average Joe off the street and say, is this reasonable, under the policy governance test, it is. And so that's saying that the policy really should be changed, if that's
Okay.
what we want.
I think the clear piece, we can just bring back some small wording adjustment on that, and I think it would clear it up. But that's exactly why we go through this, for our own, to make sure the policy is clear, and for Sean, so make sure that we don't get surprised by something that doesn't make sense. Okay?
So while we're on that one, I had a question about that, which is, you know, when you think about incidental information, and when you define incidental, it's really means kind of like minor. So, in the scope of our work together. So, I interpret that really to be everything that you're given in the board report for the most part. So what I wanted to know is the format of the board report, does that clarify incidental versus monitoring versus discussion, or action? Is that all clear in the report for you?
I think in a board report, that's fine. I think this one here, very much more specifically, is the things that happen in between. The thing that happened today, CAX drove up to the front doors with a camera and they did this. That's not something, I mean, if you wait for the board report, we're unaware. Then, I think back to Jay's point, I think you're, so, I'll leave it open, the question open on clarity of the board reports, and does that take care of the other incidental information?
The only thing that I've noticed with the board reports, and positive or negative or whatever it is I notice a lot of means. And, you know, all the administrators and I went to so-and-so to see, you know, a conference, and we all learned a lot and we had a great time, blah, blah, blah. And that's great, but the truth is it's not an ends, and how much the board should be part of that. It's great to know, but it is a means, and it's really beyond our purview. And I notice as I read through the report, you know, how much is it of what you're doing rather than what is being accomplished.
I like the board report.
I do. I like the board
reports. It
reports.
keeps us informed of what's going on regardless, because it is ultimately bringing it to the ends, because they're doing those things to get to the end. So
Right, the goals are.
to me, it's just backing up what we've set for them to do. So
I think two things on that. One is, Sean and I had a discussion of, you know, does the putting together of the board report get in the way of actually doing work?
And
Is it so encompassing that it takes time? And the answer was not really, because we take all month to do it. We patch it together as we go along as things happen. So it doesn't seem, make sure I got that pretty close, right? I mean, it does take time. The other piece, though, I think that we're putting that board report in there for is, for us, we may know that, but we also put it into the minutes and into so the community gets it.
right.
And it gets a lot of information. So what we had the discussion, what's that?
So they know they're working.
Right.
That they're doing
Right.
things to
Well,
get to the ends.
And that the means are pointed in the right direction.
Yes.
You know, and that's kind of what I
The
think
work
in
is all-
supporting the board. I also want the board to know that, yes, when we're going to these conferences, there's purpose and there's meaning behind why we're going and where we're going.
Okay, fair enough.
I think you're so informative.
Jay?
I do.
Anything else?
It's necessary.
The last thing was, I definitely agree with and would I loved your last questions of the whole gifts thing, and you know what's happening with the gifts, and you know what comes into the school district. And I don't think it's ever in 10 years that I've been on this board been recognized enough what outside people do for the school district. And I think that definitely needs to be recognized, and how that's recognized, and what exactly that looks like. I was right on with what you were saying, that, you know, we have this thing here, right or wrong, which I think it's a great part of the policy, but we don't do it enough. You know, whether that's a superintendent, you know, spearheading that whole thing, and the board's, you know, riding along with her, whatever that looks like. What is a gift, a price point, or anything like that, that's fine.
Yeah.
But I was right there with you, Sean, on that one.
Okay, good. Yeah, because that is something that I need to do some work on, because we don't have a system in place, you know, and there isn't a multitude of gift checks sitting around or anything, but it wasn't something that I did last year and reported out onto the board, and that's why I wrote it up the way that I did. So we'll remedy that for sure. And that's where, in talking with our finance manager about that, we were wondering if the amount would be up for discussion.
Yeah. I think it should be up for discussion.
The 500 amount?
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's the minimum,
You think
right? So
it's too-
500.
You think it's too high,
I think it's too low. I mean, in terms of what because I assume that we would see it in, or, I don't know, it's going into the budget at some point, right? But in terms of you having to report out to us, I think it would be good to have it up for discussion.
Well, if
Going
you're,
into the
you'd
budget.
have to define gift. If it's gonna be in the budget, you'd have to define what that is.
Right.
Somebody could donate
That's
a
right,
$2,000 pads for the cheerleaders. That's $2,000 worth, but that's not in the budget. And
Right,
it's not
right.
ever gonna be
That's
in
true,
the
it's a
budget.
gift.
So
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, no,
those
Yeah.
are
gifts
things
wouldn't
you
be in the
have to
budget.
define.
No, they go
Okay.
through, they go different, yeah, they go through different accounts.
Yeah.
It's a good
Well, what
point.
would seem reasonable? I mean, in terms of needing
think-
us to know about it.
I was gonna say, I think this is one of those things that as long as you don't break the law, do whatever. I mean, like, just report it. I don't think that we would have to, as long as you're not, it's, because really that's what policy governance is directing you not to break the law.
Yeah,
Telling you, you know, it's not our job to tell you what to take and what not to take. It's
not to break the
just
policies.
don't break the policies or break
Unlawful.
the law.
Well, and the truth is, if you guys are all about the incidental information in the superintendent's report, it's really not that tough for him to say a sentence that, you know, citizen so-and-so donated $500 for a sign, or what, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And have that in the board report.
Right.
As far as I'm concerned, if we see it in the monthly board report, he's satisfied. To me, that would satisfy the evidence part of it,
Right.
and he would have could report compliance.
Right.
In my
Right.
eyes.
Yep.
And
I agree with
I want
that
the board to
piece.
know that we do have a process in place to recognize people where they do
That's
get.
what I was just gonna
There's the
ask.
tax deduction letter that goes out,
Right.
there's the letter, you know, of appreciation and thanks for your donation, so that's all in place. What's not in place is the report then from my office to the board.
What seems to be a reasonable amount from a finance manager's point of view in terms of reporting out? Is there a threshold that seems more reasonable than 500?
Based on historical gifts.
Yeah, 1,500.
Okay. I mean,
So I'm thinking of this differently. I think everything I've heard seems to be related to cash. I gave a check. What happens if $1,200 sign for some company comes in? It's a great sign, but it's got their logo at the bottom that could potentially be controversial.
we had this
You
conversation,
know,
Yeah,
those
yeah,
kinds
that
of
stuff.
things that are not necessarily cash.
but that's not a donation.
Expected, sure would
Right.
be. It'd
No,
be, I
it's not.
donated this board to you.
Yeah. I
And
think,
you're
But it's gotta
advertising
have my
for it.
name on it.
Yeah. I don't know.
I don't know, is that a donation?
I think it would be that'd be a sponsor thing, wouldn't it? That would be considered sponsorship.
Well, I think the way that the policy is written, it says, allow the board to be uninformed of all gifts accepted with an estimated value of more than 500. So, that is anything.
Right.
Yeah,
Not just
we
cash.
might want to relook at that because
Do
you
we-
can't.
Do we get tons of gifts that are worth more than $500?
We don't, but we do get, like, for example, computers from UVM,
Okay.
used computers that altogether, you know, with the number that they've given, would probably be over $500 value.
Right.
But so to get to Mike's point, I guess, like, what is the purpose of us knowing X or Y gift? I mean, what do we want to do with that information? I guess, you know, it sounds like the partiality thing is what's written in here. We don't want to be influenced one way or another. We wouldn't want sort of inappropriate gifts coming in. What's the objective of knowing about these gifts? What would we be expected to do in reaction to a gift for 600, 700, 1,000, 2,000?
The only thing, again, the only thing I got in my mind is that something comes back later and it is a gift that was, well, you know, anytime you do something, half of everybody is not going to be happy with you.
Right.
For some reason or the other. If you hang a sign that has, you know, or you know, some strings come with a gift, how do you
Well,
go back later and look at that and say, we didn't know about it, or,
But then that's not a question of the value, is it? I mean, I like that perspective, but I don't think that measuring the dollar amount is the right metric to figure that out.
Right.
There's something else in there, I don't know what to call
may
it.
fit in a different place.
Yeah, or it's not about money
It
at all,
does,
but about.
it does fit in a different place.
Does it?
Yeah, there
And
is,
I
there
will
is
tell you-
a,
and
there
I
is
will
another
tell you,
place.
being
I'm
a-
grabbing that policy binder. That is policy
And I
governance.
will
What
tell
have you
you-
said about this in policy?
So a little bit of
That
historical note
rocks.
on signs with advertising.
Yeah.
Being a gristled veteran of the Cola Wars.
Cola Wars.
Cola, like the
That-
Pepsi,
and this is
Coca-Cola.
kind of what I was after.
Yeah, because we had, I feel like we've had this conversation, yeah.
I have been in the Cola
You go with
Wars.
Pepsi, why didn't you go with Coke?
And
I prefer Coke.
oh, you would not believe it.
Oh, I do.
You-
I
so,
do. I'll try some stuff.
You know that, and it actually ended up being resolved by the administration. The
You're talking
adminis-
about corporate sponsorship of.
Corporate sponsorship is
something-
basically dealt with contractually through the school.
Yeah.
Where
Thank
the
goodness
school
we
is gonna
don't
be
do Coke or
sponsored
Pepsi.
by,
Right.
you know, one person or another.
Yeah.
You know, what products they're
But
gonna
you
be able
just
to
brought up the
offer here.
big key there, sponsored.
Well, but is it?
Well, they
Sometimes
sign
people
a,
give
they
you
sign a
gifts to
contract
sponsor,
with us
right?
too.
I mean,
That's another thing different than a gift.
That's correct.
Well, but, okay, so did you find some, because
haven't.
this is
I'll
all.
find
this is
it.
all-
That's
know
what
it's
you're
in there.
talking about, Mike.
We might
really
want to
is a
bring this
needs,
back
I think.
after more research is done into it.
Yeah.
I think it's totally relevant, I just don't think $500 or $1,000 or $1,500 captures what we're talking about.
No,
Right.
no, I think
I
you're
agree
right.
with you
It's
on that.
not the
It's
dollar
different.
value, it's the intent.
Yeah. So what is the intent behind the dollar value then?
I think if somebody is saying, here's $1,500 to help the after-school program, you know, just inform us of it, because that is a generous gift and the public should be aware of it. You know, if somebody's sponsoring something, they're gonna put that out there anyways, so it's completely different. But a cash gift or someone that's doing something good for the academic and the student body
Gotcha.
that's over,
The scorer's
Scholarship.
table.
that has no
Sure.
benefit from doing it.
Yes.
It would be, I think, which would define a gift as this sort.
I mean, the scorer's table would be a classic example. That was $3,000 the PTO spent to give us a new basketball scorer's table. That would be
But the PTO is
recognized.
part of
We'd
the
like
school
to,
too, so.
you know, Sean could just put a sentence in, we'd like to thank the PTO for the wonderful donation of the scorer's table, blah, blah, blah.
Okay, so it's more,
You
so
know,
the
it's,
intent
in
is
how
about
lengthy
sort
his
of-
reports are,
Yeah,
in my eyes, for how many $500 and above gifts we get,
yeah.
he can, he can
We got
probably
room
ship
in the
it
document.
Yeah, it's in the
to
single
us.
digits per year.
Yeah, so
At
it's
that
not,
amount,
we're not
so.
talking about a lot of work
I think
here.
we're good.
Okay.
And we would want to know that because you would like, if you came across somebody, it would be our job to thank them because that
Exactly.
is,
That would
even
be-
as a
I
parent,
think
that is
that's the
something.
purpose of this policy
Yeah.
is
Nice.
that the board can reciprocate to the
we
public
came
and,
to the meeting.
Yes.
you know.
Okay.
That's what this
Nugget.
discussion is all about.
Yeah.
So, do we leave it at 500 for that purpose?
I would actually raise it.
Yeah,
Oh,
let's
you
raise
would-
it.
You
I would
said
raise
single
it up.
digits in a year.
So we don't need to know all this. Oh, you mean
Right.
over 500 single, oh, okay, then.
1,500?
Single digits,
I-
single digits.
You-
Right.
I'm saying number
$25.
one, leave it alone.
But you know
And
what?
now we're going into double digits.
$500 is a lot of
I mean,
money, man.
this is really a debate for another time, because we
Yep.
can't change a policy
But
tonight.
let me
Right,
just
right.
point one simple thing. If somebody were to donate a library that they no longer had a use for, you could be talking thousands of dollars worth of books.
Right,
Right,
But-
but we also don't need to accept
right.
donations
I'm
either.
just
We
using
are
it
not
as an
looking for
example.
cookies.
No,
Do you know what I'm saying?
yeah, I do.
So I would actually raise it a little bit because 500 is not as much money as it used to be.
Okay. So,
Yes.
to
That's true.
Jay's point, we can't actually change it tonight.
Yeah.
But if we are gonna bring it
But,
back
yeah, we're gonna
for
bring
an
it back, right?
adjustment in
Yeah.
section 4,
1,000.
we will, we'll not debate it here. We will make Sean and I will put together a
Great.
draft, and we'll iron it out and nail it down at that point.
I think for how few it is.
Well done.
Yep, I agree.
Whatever.
Right.
Okay, because we don't want to end up too deep into means. Anybody else have any other items in here? They wanted to,
I like the clarity of the interpretation. I think that was useful.
I think the more that we see these,
It's
the
getting
interpretation,
easier.
the evidence, it's just so.
Okay, last question then, is there anything in here that would need a direct inspection that anybody would know, that would want to take action to do a direct inspection in the next month?
I don't think so.
Okay,
No, but I don't know if this ties into this, but budget information, will that still be available to board members that that want it, or?
Mhm.
Okay.
I think we had discussed that we were gonna get,
Basically do the same thing we did last year.
it is available, but it won't be printed out for all.
Okay.
Yep, it is available on request.
Excellent.
Yep.
That's true for anybody, isn't it? Or no?
It is available if you ask for it. It's
Public
just a matter
information
of,
requests can be made.
right. If you printed the whole thing out, it's
Yeah, right.
quite extensive, and they were printing them all out.
They used to
but-
have a copy up at the city and a copy down at the.
Mike's preference is a higher level view.
Yep, no, I think that's
Jay likes to
fine.
get down into the details,
I
so
know,
that's,
I also just want to clarify for all our,
Oh, yeah, it
our enormous
definitely
public
is
out there,
available.
that anybody can get that. We've just chosen, for our purposes, that that's not the most efficient way to do business, but it's not because we're hiding anything, because anybody can look at it anytime they want.
right, right. And so, on to item 9 here was, and we had talked about this before. This is a board monitoring report. And 3.2 is accountability to the accountability of the superintendent. What this is, making sure that, I think what I want to do is just go through it and make sure that there is nothing we want to bring it back for the discussion purposes, and make sure that we're okay.
That's right.
3.2 is superintendent is the board's only link to the operational achievement and conduct, so that all authority and accountability of staff, as far as the board is concerned, is considered the authority and accountability of the superintendent. Accordingly, 1, the board will never give instruction to persons who report directly or indirectly to the superintendent. 2, the board will not evaluate either formally or informally any staff other than the superintendent. And 3, the board will review successful superintendent performance as demonstrated by accomplishment of board-stated ends and avoidance of board-prescribed means. I think we talked about that one last year at this time, I think also, and said that we believe that it covered what we needed it to cover, and that we were following it to the best of our knowledge and ability. No, better than our ability. We were following it to the letter of the law. Any thoughts on bringing this guy back? As we will ask on most of these as we go through.
In terms of bringing it back to.
Bringing it back for discussion and update. Or is it cover what we think it needs to at this point? I think it covers it.
I think it covers
Right,
it.
so no action required there. That's why I brought my policy book. All right. And we will hit the other board ones too, just to make sure that we're touching them and
Great.
we've considered them. Because the last thing we want to do with this is have to get into one of them and not have an idea of what was actually in there, or it didn't say what I really thought it said.
Right,
You know,
right.
and is
Yeah,
it
thanks for bringing it.
situationally dependent? Hopefully. All right. The student report to the board, item 10. Adanya, Rainbow, who's up today first?
First things first, we had our Make a Difference Day, or week, the 25th. It was a very good food drive, and a bunch of students came and carved pumpkins, and the Burlington Free Press took some pictures.
Mhm.
They're featured.
All 3 of the girls were in it.
Pretty sweet. And then you can see the pumpkins at the roundabout in front of the Key Bank. So.
Awesome.
Okay, and in the week of Halloween, we had a spirit week in the high school. It was arranged by the student council. Monday was sports day. Tuesday was kind of like a culture day. Wednesday was Spartan day. Thursday was twin day. And Friday was...
Twin day?
Yeah.
As in, I have a twin?
Like dress up as someone else,
Oh.
same outfit.
Oh.
With the same clothes.
Cool, okay.
Yes. And also Friday, since it was Halloween day, it was costume day. And there are a few costumes on display on the school's Twitter, so if you'd like to see some funky costumes or all that stuff, you could also see it there. It's also on Courtney Paquette's Twitter. Also on Halloween, there were Halloween greet and treats where you bought little messages and little candies for someone in the school. Also on October 30th, there was the Roland Conference, which there were a few students and a few teachers who went to the workshops.
And a few board members.
Yes, yes. And brought back new information to the school and also their students and peers. And so I also went to the conference. I thought it was pretty interesting.
These two. And so going back a little bit, on October 20th, there was the state board meeting here hosted at the school. So a couple of our board members participated in. I didn't, so you want to ask them. 4 students were chosen to give some of the members a tour of the school. So I helped out with that, so it's pretty sweet. On November 7th, the whole entire school went to the PAC to watch the middle and high school's performance of Aladdin. It was pretty nice, especially the costumes. Great. Yesterday there was the iLab Share It Night, which is pretty great. Yep.
It was what night?
iLab Share It Night.
Oh, cool.
And so, the iLab poster, in case you've seen it, was designed by one of our students. So, pretty sweet.
Also, earlier today, there was a student at the quarter luncheon at WAF's West Side Deli by CCB. Students were honored for qualities or kind of behaviors they have exempted that were honored by the teachers. And so they were also honored for outstanding work in like a certain class that they had. The food was very good. There's also a craft fair coming up, the annual PTO craft fair. This year it'll be on November 22nd. And every year, I'm not sure if you guys know this, but there are students that volunteer to help out, help people and crafters set up their stands and on Friday night. And this is completely voluntary, and some students work for 9 hours some evening.
Wow.
And also, it will be mentioned later in the meeting, but there will be the annual train show that'll occur on December 6th. And the train show is a fundraiser that helps for juniors promote and fundraise for their senior prom.
This one's last item, but little future in the future. But on December 11th, we're having our winter concert. The middle and high school band, chorus, and orchestra will be performing right at 7 to 7:30, but most likely 7.
December 11th, huh?
When was that again?
December 11th.
11th.
That's right here?
Yep, right in PAC. You're all welcome.
Great.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next item here was a report on the VSBA annual meeting. We also have a couple of other items. You mentioned the Roland conference. There was the Nellie Mae quarterly gathering with the Partnership for Change, and so we'll hopefully get a quick bit of an update. Jay and I did go down to the VSBA, and Tori came down for the award ceremony on Friday at lunch, so thank you. And Jen, unfortunately, situation beyond your control. Do appreciate the thought for sure.
It's my luck.
Yeah, right, that'll happen. The VSBA conference, you know, other than the award for the leadership as a board itself, sitting through on Friday, having Rebecca Holcomb talk, the Secretary of Education, and spent a solid 5 minutes on the iLab, with a sheet on the iLab. Over the course of the 2 days, there was plenty of Winooski stuff in there. It is, you know, proficiency based learning, individual plans. It was just walking out of there was an exceptional feeling. I don't know if I was the only one, but I got the feeling that it was exceptional. So a couple of things that I did go through. I did one session on open meeting law. changes, and Jay had brought one of these to our attention, and that was you can do emails back and forth now for scheduling a meeting, organizing an agenda, and distributing materials to discuss at a meeting. But it doesn't give you the ability to send and have a conversation about what those materials are without doing it in an open forum. So
No discussion.
no discussion, just, you know, here are the things that we're doing, and so it's just purely a push kind of information setup. But there were other couple of other items in there that I just wanted to mention. The electronic meetings. I was thinking about doing it on the night that I missed in October, but I figured it probably wasn't a good fit, me and my condition and this and that. But you can do meetings externally. You can do them through, I don't know, FaceTime or whatever electronic means that you so define, unless you have a quorum of the board that is going to be remote, then nothing changes. If you have a quorum, more than, in this case, 3 or more of us that would be remote, you have to designate a location that the public can come to be able, and you got to have, if everybody's going to be remote, which you can do, you got to have a location that you're going to have a staff member, somebody here with information that can listen in.
That can broadcast it?
And that will, somehow you got to be able to.
Make it accessible for, okay.
Yeah, it's got to be accessible.
Another thing to that too, Mike, votes, guys, need to be taken by roll call. Does everybody understand what that means?
No.
Yeah, individual.
That actually has to do with our wonderful secretary over here, so she can perk an ear a little bit. But what will happen is, so everybody is very, very sure how everyone is voting, because some people are remotely keying in.
Oh.
The chair would go down through the list of the board members by alphabetically, with himself being last, and he would say, "Board member Cleveland, how do you vote?" And you would say, "Aye," and then he would go to each succeeding board member. And in the minutes, the thing that would be different for you would be, instead of saying like the motion passed 5-0, you would have 2 columns. And one column would be the ayes with each board member's name listed, and the nays would have each other board members listed. And it's just for clarity, guys.
And that's only if somebody's remote.
That's correct.
Okay.
Only if someone's
So,
remote. And
all right.
they say it. And there's a whole thing on Robert's rules on roll call voting, but I've just given you the synopsis of it. And if those things are followed, you'll be safe, I promise.
2 years ago, we had 18 inches of snow and coming down. We had 3 people show up in snowshoes, and
We
one
did.
skated in their car. So I don't know that we're going to run into too much of this
Right.
too soon. But
Everybody else, we were trying to talk Sean into closing school the next day, and he wasn't really convinced
So
until we got home then.
that was-
Like, come
I
on,
don't,
give me it.
I don't recall that. I must not have made it.
You didn't. It
No.
was 3 of, I think, there's 4 of us. I
think
can't
it was
remember.
4 of us, yeah.
Yeah.
That was the night that I designated this board the hardest working board in Vermont.
there you go.
Right. Well,
And-
I just
And look, we have
Been-
more. Maybe
been
they
referenced.
forgot to put that on the list of why we
To
got it.
get to the bottom of where I was going here, a couple of other items, and Sean, maybe you can help me with this. Notice and agendas. Notice has to go out electronically, but if an individual requests it, it's got to be on a list. Media outlets also, I think, can cover that. But it has to be posted physically in 2 different places, other than the city clerk's office. Are we doing that? I
Yeah.
know one
Yeah,
is
we
here.
do.
Yep.
It always gets
Where's the
publicly
second
warned.
one?
O'Brien Center.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
That's the one I was missing. All right.
Like
Good.
an actual paper.
Yeah.
Physical hard
Physical
copy.
paper and pencil? No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
So it actually gets posted. there.
Requirement, yep. So that was good. Meeting minutes posted no later than 5 days after the meeting have to be posted to the website, if you have one. We do. It doesn't have to be the final copy of the minutes. It has to be a copy of the minutes. Once we approve it, then the approved, if they change, would take its place.
And that really should say, Sean, somewhere on there, unapproved.
Right.
Yep.
Because they are the minutes, but until the minutes are approved by the board, it's not necessarily what happened in that meeting, because they have not been officially corrected.
Yep. And the only other piece that I wanted to mention, and it was a very interesting discussion in the meeting itself, and that was executive session. And I handed you each a copy of the one sheet that I took out of there. and I'm only gonna read one line out of this, that we would have to discuss, because one of the any student item is covered under, I believe, HIPAA, right? So most student discipline or.
It's covered under FERPA.
FERPA, sorry. Other items, though, have to pass an acid test. This is, premature general public knowledge would clearly place the public body or person involved at a substantial disadvantage. We've got to be able to, we've got to be able to claim that in order to just have a discussion in executive session. The interesting piece, they went through some case scenarios, and hopefully we can get maybe Nicole or something with to go through some of these with us, but of a potential personnel matter that wasn't going to result in civil litigation nor potential prosecution. It wasn't attorney-client communication that was impacted, should be done in an open session.
Well, there's also the property deals, right?
Well, yeah, definitely, those contracts, labor relations, arbitration, mediation, those are all understood.
Right.
But you start thinking about some of the other things that we've talked about, do they in fact meet that acid test? And so we're gonna have to make sure that we do that check each time to make sure that we're when we go into executive session, it is for a reason. When we do come out of executive session, if there is something that we have to take action on, we have to do it out in open session after, so. Just thought I would copy that one for your.
One last
for
thing,
your
Mike,
reference.
whenever somebody makes a motion, they should put the specific, like tonight, somebody would make an executive session motion to discuss student discipline.
Like to be more thorough, and when we make a motion?
When you make a motion, yeah, you should have enter executive session, and then you state the general reason therefore, and Sean,
Okay,
you
so
will
you're saying
have,
just for that
you and
specific.
Mike will have that in our, in our
Right.
thing.
And then there was the only other meeting I attended was a fiduciary, just look at your auditor's report, and we got one coming out, so we'll have that pretty soon, but be very diligent about processes for handling money and funds and stuff, so that was an interesting one. Jay, your thoughts?
I actually attended a breakout session on school consolidation. And there's been some interesting developments. The entire conference was kind of geared around, lead the change. The train folks on school consolidation or some type of reorg of the state education system is leaving the station, is the bottom line. And what exactly that's gonna look like, nobody really knows. There has been a meeting offline of 10 legislators over the summer, led by Shap Smith and some other key ones. It's not an official committee. They're kind of meeting offline to discuss this thing, and that's their gig.
They don't have open meeting law, and I'm just kidding.
I don't know what they're doing. I know they're not an official committee, but they are meeting, and the idea is to have some type of plan when the legislature reconvenes this year.
There's an article to that effect in the board report too.
Right, there's an article to that effect of the board report, of basically having a plan of what's happening. The VSBA, their stance has been, and we actually voted in our annual meeting, basically to, we're not gonna be able to block the train or stop the train, so the idea is we're gonna try to get on board the train and help steer it a little bit.
Trains don't have steering wheels.
For what does that mean for Winooski? If Winooski was consolidated with another neighboring school district under current regional educational district guidelines, our tax rates would skyrocket in this district. Under the RED, or the regional educational district guidelines, tax rates over the course of about 4 years have to merge, and all the districts around us have higher tax rates than we do. So our taxes
But
would
some
go
a
up.
lot more than others.
But some a lot more than others, yes.
Yeah, I mean, there's, Colchester and Milton are relatively close to us.
Relatively close.
But if you go to South Burlington, there's a vast
Or
difference.
Burlington, yeah, there's a
Right.
vast difference, but however you look at it, it's the chances of theirs coming down is probably pretty slim. Ours would most likely go up. That's under current law. Don't know what's gonna happen under new legislation. Last year, the House did pass a bill. The Senate had very different ideas. And so this is gonna be a very interesting legislative session, but all the feedback that everyone's been getting is that something is gonna happen in the state of Vermont. And what that's gonna look like and how it's gonna impact us, nobody really knows. We do have our, study that we did. I did run into several members of the State Board of Education and said, we still have it if you care to see it.
It's still fresh. I mean,
it's still fresh.
Yeah. Last fall.
Whatever happens with the law, once the laws are passed and we figure out what exactly is going to happen, I'm not going to be here, but the board really needs to get out ahead of this. So, you know, hopefully Sean and Mike and you guys can keep an eye on this whole thing, because when these laws change, folks, whatever's gonna happen here, you're gonna be better off controlling your own fate than allowing the state to control it. I can almost guarantee you that. But that was basically the feedback of this whole thing. We're in a time of uncertainty. There is definitely going to be some type of change, of restructuring. Again, lots of caveats. You know, they still have the Brigham decision, which said they, you know, you just can't have each town separated. That's, you know, against the law. Supreme Court was very clear on that, so they have to get around all of that. But they are talking about forming some larger school districts. So we'll see what happens.
And unfolding. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah.
All right. So if anything else, Jeff?
No, that's it.
Okay. Moving down, recent community activities, this is where I thought I would put, Julian, one thing I did miss is the opiate discussion that you led. That was, you know,
This was a great one. I mean, they're all great, don't get me wrong. You should come to any of them. But this one had, there were several recovering addicts at the meeting, and we spent the bulk of the meeting hearing the story and asking questions of two of the recovering addicts who were willing to be open books, basically, in their words, and to let us ask all the questions that we wanted to see if we could understand more, bust some myths, get better sense of the way that it all works. And it was, I think everybody was pretty moved by the end of it. It was a really, really good way to sort of keep us honest, you know, and make sure that we're keeping our feet on the ground as we talk about this and not getting too lost in abstractions and sort of, you know, myth-making of folks who are maybe more distant from the problem than might be advisable for people who want to talk knowledgeably about what's going on. So that was really useful. I think the lesson that we took there is that we're going to need to recruit more recovering addicts to make sure that we are keeping ourselves honest and moving forward in this conversation. And I think the next meeting, which will be in December, is going to be about kind of doing some more mapping of the different cycles, both of addiction prevention and treatment, and then figuring out where the community is going to go from there.
Yeah, I think the one thing that's impressed, I went to the first one and the third one. I missed the one in the center, but normally when you get involved in items like this, you want to jump in and do something.
Yeah, yeah.
And jumping in and doing the wrong thing is worse than sitting on your hands and doing nothing.
Yeah.
And in this case, I like the approach because it is, you know, what is it?
Yeah.
What is it that we've got?
Yeah.
What does it look like?
Yeah.
And is there anything we can do to actually get involved? And it was very moving to have the addicts there, and they were recovering, but still, in their words, nonetheless addicts.
Yeah.
But they were very open about what it is that you can and shouldn't do.
Yeah.
So it was. I'm looking forward to the next couple here as we get kind of primered and focused as what we as a community can actually do.
Yeah.
So I take my hat off to you with the way that this thing is being driven forward. It's good.
Yeah, thanks. Well, I feel like we're getting really good participation. I think we're heading somewhere.
That's great.
And there is a regional that regional group that I've spoken about before that's came out of the state level, Governor Shumlin's initial forum. United Way is having their second regional meeting, and that's next Monday over at the Black Box Theater from 4 to 6, so I can send that information out to everybody. I'm going to be going to that.
Yeah, that's on Monday?
Yeah, and it's focused on the question, what's the treatment system of care?
Aha, okay. Well then, I know Kate was going to go to one, well, anyway. Yeah, I'd love to get that information. I'd love to send that around to our group and see if we can make a show in there.
Good.
Excellent.
Good. The Rowan Conference?
Rowan Conference, the part that I saw was great, and I saw Rainbow there, and I saw Sean there. The keynote speaker was really, really good.
That's awesome.
Right? And you know, it means that sort of grit concept. You know, hard work pays off more than brains or talent. Although hard work plus talent equals success was her basic equation. And hard work is the one that is like the variable you can control, right? I mean, it's kind of what we were talking about earlier. And then, man, I got to see this great session on by this science teacher who puts together these collaborative teams of kids to put together projects that they built from scratch. I mean, it was just incredible, the sort of science applications that they would blend. So the science teacher would work with the English teacher, and they would blend these kind of creative engineering projects, you know, build a remote control plane, build these really complicated mechanical structures, but have them be relevant to a story that you heard at the senior center, that someone told you about their life. You know, tell me a meaningful story about your life at the senior center. The guy tells a story about the first dance with his wife who died a few years back, and so they make this beautiful mechanical toy of, you know, two people dancing around and around. So there's physics, there's math, there's poetry, there's English, there's language, there's social, there's connection between, you know, the abstract numbers and the real feelings of people. It was just a really beautiful sort of illustration of the possibility of you know, cross-disciplinary collaboration and ultimately grit, because his presentation was on premeditated adversity. So how do you build adversity into the classroom so that you guys can have challenges, get frustrated, throw your hands up in frustration, walk away, and then come back and say, okay, let's do this and start again. Really great. I really enjoyed it. And I mean, Rainbow, you were there. Sean, you were there.
Rainbow, what'd you take away?
I felt like the workshops they could be improved on. Because the second one, I went to a digital portfolio one. I felt like I kind of knew some of that because the middle school, we did similar things. The morning one was also project-based learning. That was at Cabot. That was pretty interesting. I really, really enjoyed the keynote speaker and also the ending presentation where the students got to present something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, my takeaway was, because I only got to stay for half a day because I was heading down to Lake Maury for where you guys were, but Angela Duckworth was the keynote speaker, and the idea of grit, and then the wheels just start turning about, okay, I understand it, and I know it when I see it, and how do you teach it, but how do you set up opportunities for kids to experience it, and then how do you mediate their emotions and their experience so that they can kind of gain more grit.
Right.
And that you know, in her definition, the last part of it is towards long-term goals. And for kids, that's a hard thing to conceptualize. You know, that what they're doing right now impacts, you know, college, career, family, all those different things. And so how do you get that message across? I was thinking a lot about that.
Long term can be about an hour and a half.
Yeah.
Or the end of the day.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
For sure.
Or getting up in the morning. Just kidding.
All right.
Great.
Good. Sounds like a lot of involvement. Any other?
The
you
Nellie
had
May.
the Nellie May.
Yeah. So we had the Nellie May conference, and great contingency from Winooski there. It was the cross-site gathering. All the 3 other sites that also got the Nellie May grant. We come together. This is the 3rd time?
Mm-hmm. I think it's quarterly. So yeah, they just keep going.
And so as this has been building over time, so has the learning opportunities. where prior they would sort of upfront it because proficiency-based education is something that's kind of new and there's not really a landing pad or a pathway to it because you're kind of like mucking your way through it. And so, but then this one, Winooski did a lot of presenting. Also, what really stood out to me was the beginning piece of it when the entry level or the beginning part of like what's proficiency, and you had to sit in your like group. So I was sitting with parents and school board members, and then there were teachers and superintendents and principals, and we sort of went over some things, and they had a bunch of stuff on the table and said, okay, demonstrate what your role is and how do you see your role in changing of high school. And it was that moment where you're like, what? Just give me the multiple choice test. Seriously? I gotta like demonstrate with these people I don't know? Seriously? And so it was really cool to go through that part where you had to build something, and then all of a sudden like the wheels would start turning and people would have ideas and you're like, oh my gosh, wait, we need more time. And the presentation or the outcomes that came out of these things that we made out of sticky notes and Play-Doh and twisty ties, it was really quite powerful the way people saw the roles. It also got you really thinking about what is your role in this from where you're standing. And I walked away being really, one, proud of Winooski and recognizing the hard work that we've done at a board level, but then what's been happening at an administrative level, the teacher level, and the student level, and how we've had voice from all these different stakeholders along the way. Like, it kind of reminded me of the group that you did with opiates, but you got to have the people who are impacted with it and have their voice there. It's kind of trying to do students that are learning and proficiency-based learning without student voice. It's like, wait a second, what? We're missing something. So it was really amazing to really realize that we've been building our ends, our graduation expectations, our board goals, the way that administration's been developing. We're all moving in a very cohesive, efficient direction based on what our community wants, what we want from the kids, and what the kids are telling us they want and need too. Yeah. That was a pretty powerful moment to realize, like, as a board member, as we continue down this path, is to be able to communicate it back to our community and to make, like, that's what our role is. It helped knowing about our award, which really was about being a champion in proficiency-based education, and it's easy, I find, in this role because I know it's what the community wants. We might not be able to define it really well because we're sort of mucking around in it, kind of like we did in those little projects. But we know we want from our students what we were hearing at this table about career ready and what we were hearing from the college readiness. And so there's a lot of connections between what students and parents and community and making sure it's efficiently run and it's financed well, it meets the community. And I don't know, it was a good moment. It was great to also see the celebrations of Winooski there too. But I think we're in a good spot, a really good place.
Sean, other thoughts from?
Well, the superintendent's made an octopus.
Yeah.
And that was our representation. Because part of that was looking at the logic model and figuring out, you know, what was your work, your kind of your direct work, and then what did you kind of oversee, and you needed to influence and so forth. And so we said that we basically had to keep the whole, the vision, the ends in place, and then make sure, and then have our tentacles, so to speak, in all the other areas, and making sure that everything is pointed in the right direction and fend off the things that get in the way.
Yeah. That's good. It reminds me of the ones that the administrators did, the group of principals. They did a spider web. Yeah. The ones they don't want get. Yeah, it was really good.
Yeah, and then there was one of the highlights for me last week at Nellie Mae was there was a African American woman, Superintendent Deborah, and I can't remember her last name, and she was a superintendent in Richmond, Virginia, and she was just one of the most passionate, powerful people I've ever met. And she had this room full of people up singing and dancing and impassioned about kids and learning. And she told a story of her own upbringing in the Bronx and how it was really a teacher, somebody from the school who got her connected to some resources and really helped her out and helped her, mentored her to get through school and to go on to college. And she said, and my friend right down the hallway in the projects also did the same thing and had a similar mentor at the school. And the little girl down the hallway in the projects is Supreme Court Justice Sotomayor. And so she said, if the two of us can do this from the Bronx, everybody can do it. And it was just really, really inspiring.
All right. Next agenda, I know we have our annual agenda, but I did want to put one other item on there, and that is a board goals update. Jay, I know you had one in for the piece that you had with the board education from the last time. Nobody else has done a readout, and Tori and Jen, you guys had partnered with parent groups to develop a higher level of community interest. Julian, you and I have been trying to get together with Jane. We'll get that. We'll get another calendar out. That's about retention, student family communication out to the community. We did one pass here for the college career readiness. Now got to look. I think we had wellness on the calendar next, right? So. What we'll do, that one is a little ways out, but it'll be good. I think that was the next one rather than local and global. Oh, it is a local and global engagement. Okay, so that's set at this point for February. And so we'll have to have a discussion either next month or January to get a list so that I can go try to figure out how do we get somebody in here for that discussion. I think that'll be a interesting discussion to try to get a broad-based group in for that.
Global and local?
Yeah, global and local engagement, and so
great.
just
Yeah.
what kind of, I'm not even sure exactly how to define that at this point, so that'll be a interesting discussion, discussing who we're gonna have in here for a discussion. So, all right, upcoming meetings, PTO Craft Fair on the 22nd, PTO conference, parent-teacher conferences, sorry, on the 24th, Thanksgiving recess, school closed 25th to the 28th. Budget meetings.
So the first is not a meeting, just to clarify. That's when you will have the budget by then. The first meeting is the 3rd.
Of December?
Oh, okay.
Yep.
All right. So we got 3/10/17 and then January 14. So we got 4
Wait, let's see.
passes
All right.
at this thing.
3/10,
It's nice we don't have
3/10,
negotiations.
and I won't be here
Yeah.
for the 17th.
Won't be here for the 17th, okay.
3, 10.
And that's
So
great.
1 is not a meeting, 3 is a meeting.
Yes.
Okay.
I
10
think
is
I
a
might have a
meeting.
class on one of those days, so I might not be here for one of them.
17 is a meeting. Oh yeah, I got all these in. We must have talked about these before. Yeah, I'm gonna be traveling on the 3rd, I'm afraid.
Traveling on the 3rd, okay. That is more likely presentation,
17th.
first
Presentation.
pass presentations of what it is that we had and where we're
January 4th,
going.
I think
Okay.
January
I'm
14th.
not,
is
Skype
so,
you, right?
yeah, right. I
We
can
can Skype 'em in.
come in remotely.
We could certainly do that if you're gonna be stable in your travels,
Well,
all right.
Oh, you could
Uh,
let
Sure,
me
you
borrow
wrote
your
in.
computer.
College and Scholars Train Show on the 26th, and
We
then
get
our
a trial
regular board
run.
meeting will
Don't Brian,
coincide
that's
with
my
one of the budget
yeah,
meetings
well,
on the
that's a good
10th.
sign.
All right, I'm just gonna,
Are we gonna put out a plea for people to come, the 4 community members?
I would, for the budget meetings, I would ask you each to grab a budget buddy like we tried to do last year, get somebody involved, bring somebody in. And if you can, ask them to bring somebody. I would love to have somebody other than just us in the room.
Are all the folks that are watching RETN
Welcome.
from Winooski can apply, can call, or
The-
who would you call if
We
you
will
wanted to
be,
do it?
we will be having the discussions here on the 3rd, we'll get the data on the 1st, but the 3rd, the 10th, and the 17th, we'll be talking budget here in the library.
But if you wanted to be specifically the
Oh.
community member, but anyone can join it. We don't have to have those 4 that we have typically had.
No, if somebody wants to come in and
Okay.
partake in those discussions, that's fine.
Oh, great,
You know, and
okay.
Ultimately,
Great.
we have to work through that budget and get it to an endpoint, so that's the 5 of us, that's our job, ultimately,
Right.
is to get it there with all the input we can take. That's
I mean,
constructive and positive and moves us forward.
Yeah. The helpful piece, I think, around the budget buddy concept is somebody that comes through the whole process. And,
Yes.
goes to all the meetings so
Yeah.
that they can really understand the full
Yeah.
picture.
And when you're
participate.
done, be an advocate for
Right.
what it is we finally come up with, because, hopefully we've got a budget that we're gonna be able to bring forward in positive manner and know that it's gonna meet our ends.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we got a pretty good idea on communication on that.
Yep, yep.
Great.
All right. And I wanted to do two other things. One is thank you for this concept called externalization that Julian so gracefully noted the last time when I missed.
Yep.
I will not be missing a meeting anytime soon, I hope. And
Good
that should go to all of you too. Don't miss a meeting if there's something up for adoption. But I did want to congratulate very specifically a couple of teachers. They were in the consent agenda, but I wanted to bring them out publicly just because I think we need to take them out. Randy Argraves and Catherine Blair, UVM Outstanding Teachers. Around, so thank you guys. Sue Messier, Vermont Association for Health, Physical Education, Recreation, and Dance. That was a single statewide award. So, and I believe that is at least the personnel items that I had seen in there. I think got them all, right? Yep. So, all right. I would at this point accept a motion to move into executive session for a student discipline discussion at this point. No action required on this one.
So moved.
And a second.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?